Good evening, race fans, and welcome to Podium eSports coverage of the 13th round of Season 2 of Monday Night Racing, presented by Tufco Flooring, the Big Green Egg 120 at iRacing's virtual Dover International Speedway in Dover, Delaware. James Pike, the voice of Podium eSports, here alongside Taylor Burris and Blake McCandless, with our producer Ryan Bauer punching all the buttons in his virtual production trailer powered by Top Flight Computers. Blake, we have the Cup cars at Dover tonight, and if you want to talk about throttle application and how to get back on it on corner exit, amongst the tracks in the NASCAR Cup Series schedule, there may be no greater challenge in that regard than the Monster Mile. This is a place that will, for lack of a better term, and apologize for the terrible joke right off the top of the show, eat you up if you're not careful.
Not at all, James. This track is notorious. This concrete eats at tires. Those drivers who are not able to conserve them, not able to lay off that throttle a little bit, they're going to be feeling it tonight. And obviously, again, we hear it all the time talking about falling into the banking in these corners. A lot of speed here makes for some really, really exciting racing.
It's a fast track. It's a mile, but it's a quick mile. Lots of banking to be had here, Taylor Burris. So you think of a place like this and a place like New Hampshire, which is also a mile, but they might as well be on completely different sides of the earth. They're so completely different in terms of how they race and how you tackle them, even though they're the same length.
They certainly are. I mean, this track here is high speeds, bank corners. Drivers are having to be on the absolute limit here in order to just survive racing at Dover International Speedway. And as we'll see tonight, this track is a self-cleaning racetrack. If an incident were to happen off turn number 2 or in the middle of turns 3 and 4, these drivers are going to go straight down and possibly collect multiple different cars that are in the way.
We've seen that so many times in turns 2 and 4. We'll watch and see if it happens tonight as we take a look at where we are in the world. In the first state, not terribly far away from Philadelphia, Baltimore, the Garden State of New Jersey. You get a lot of folks from those different areas to come in and see the best of the best of the NASCAR Cup Series here at Dover International Speedway, which turned 50-some 2 years ago and has a long and storied history. Although it was an asphalt track, if you can believe it, for about the first 30 years of its existence, and then in 1995 was repaved to become the concrete canyon that is the Monster Mile that we know and love today. At this point, time to turn to our opening ceremony, so we start with tonight's national anthem. We return back here to Dover International Speedway, and we look at how things sit after one round of the playoffs completed. We sent home 3 drivers last week, so it's now 10 drivers that are eligible for the title, and their 2-race round of 10 begins this evening and concludes next week when we take the street stocks to Rockingham Speedway. You'll see that broadcast next Monday night here on Podium eSports. But Nick DeGroot, your point leader, entering this race, also got the victory at Talladega last week. Anthony Alfredo's got 2 wins this season. Kyle Busch has a victory. All these drivers outside of the well, actually within rather the top 4, all have victories on the season. Everybody else outside of the top 4 fighting for things. So we'll keep our eyes peeled and see how things shake out, but you're going to see some development, I think, towards the end of the night, but it's largely fair game and pretty well even to start off this round of 10. Now time to get ready to bring everybody to the starting grid. And time to recognize and congratulate Anthony Alfredo as the winner of tonight's Bryant Shock Technology Pole Award with a 21.393. Remember, he won the Saturday Night Thunder race back here in May when all the stars of the Xfinity Series and Truck Series and more came here and raced at the virtual Dover International Speedway. So Alfredo going to try and look to back that up and his 2 victories in Season 2 of Monday Night Racing up to this point with the victory. Alfredo starts alongside NASCAR Xfinity Series driver Ryan Vargas. Now in the first row, Will Rogers, Raja Caruth, DJ Cummings, and Ruben Garcia with one of his best qualifying efforts of the season to date, Taylor.
Certainly so, and as we go a little further down, row number 4, you'll see Gabe Wood and Garrett Smithley, followed by NASCAR champion. Of course, Kyle Busch has about 7 wins, a couple in the Cup Series, and then about 6 in the Xfinity Series over the time. Looking forward to seeing what he can do. Blake, who are you looking forward to down further in the line?
Well, I'm looking to see David Schildhouse and how he's going to fare. You remember he was very close to winning all the way back at the Homestead Miami Speedway. Would not be shocked to see him slowly work his way forward throughout the night as well. You look back a couple of rows, you see Justin Malillo all the way back there. He's the inside of row number 12. He was one of the 88 drivers who will be moving forward into the Car Anomaly 500 in just a couple of days. So it should be interesting to see a couple of those guys try to work their way through the field.
Also note Preston Pardis and Nick DeGroot buried here in the back of the field. And how about a season debut for the former Australian Supercar champion Shane Van Gisbergen, SVG, in his 97 as per the usual, starting towards the back of this field. The first time Shane's been involved in a Monday Night Race event. So a warm welcome to the Kiwi as we take a look at the track facts and the weather conditions that we'll be working with in tonight's race. This is, of course, Dover International Speedway, which opened in 1969 here in Dover, Delaware. It's a 1.0 mile, 1.6 kilometer oval with 24 degrees of banking in the corners and 9 degrees of banking on the straightaways. Tonight we go for 120 laps, 120 miles, just north of 190 kilometers. The in-sim time, as per usual, is May 15th, 2021, the default day for iRacing, and just about 3 o'clock local time. Cloudy, though, across the board, and we're not going to see as much sun as we normally do. It's trying to peek through the clouds, but one of the first overcast races we've had in Season 2 of Monday Night Racing. Likewise, air temp is a cool 65 degrees Fahrenheit. Track temp is 82 degrees Fahrenheit, so there should be grip in this concrete. Winds coming from the north at 1 mile an hour, and no humidity whatsoever. I guess it's all caught up in the clouds. Blake McCandless, quick final thoughts here before we go green flag racing.
Well, you were just talking about the weather. I think it's going to have a pretty big impact on the amount of tire wear that these drivers will see. As far as iRacing is concerned, 65 degrees is pretty much the minimum temperature that you can have running in the sim. So if anything, it's going to decrease a little bit of that tire wear, but again, speeds are going to pick up as a result. We can already see they're flying around here. 21.393 was our pole time, so that is insanely fast. And you know, these cool conditions and the overcast conditions are going to contribute to a very fast racetrack out here this evening.
It will be very quick. Also of note, we've got a Bryant Shock Technology in-race reporter for you this evening. Matt Stallnet racing in the NASCAR machine and starting a little bit further back in the field than he'd like. 18th is where he'll begin on the grid, but Matt is our in-race reporter, so we'll get the opportunity to bring him in over the course of the evening to see how things are going to shake out for the driver from Syracuse, New York, who has been consistently fast. I would say, Taylor Burris, if you're looking at drivers who haven't been able to go to victory lane yet in this season, but have had some of the best seasons overall, Stolnick may well be at the top of the list. It just seems like every week he's pulling out top 5, top 10, top 5, top 10, left and right.
He certainly has what I call Mr. Consistency for the most part of this season in Monday Night Racing, but he's got to make sure he takes care of his equipment. I talked to his teammate DJ Cummings during pre-race warm-ups and everything, and they said about 5 laps or so, the tires are starting to give away, and their times are going to start dropping to more than a second over those 5 laps. So got to take care of your stuff early on, so that way you can be there at the end.
Worth noting as well that we are with the low downforce, high horsepower package. So these drivers are going to have to be mindful on corner exit about how they get on the throttle, as Anthony Alfredo leads the Big Green Egg Ford Mustang to the green flag in this Big Green Egg 120 at Dover International Speedway. He jumps ahead by about maybe 4 or 5 car lengths. It was a great initial start for Alfredo. Ryan Vargas and Will Rogers battling side by side, and door to door as they go through turn 4 for the first time. Blake McCandless.
Well, and that side-by-side battle has allowed Anthony Alfredo, I mean, you can look at the advantage he has. It is 5, 6, maybe even 7 car lengths already as he gets into the banking in 1 and 2. They finally sort things out for second. Will Rogers gets the best of that battle as now Ryan Vargas has a mirror full of Raja Caruth looking to make his way forward in the early laps.
Raja Caruth, who's got a big year, going to be running plenty of races in the ARCA Menard Series East with all the folks at Rev Racing and company. Going to be a fun one. You see that number 6 machine painted just about like his ARCA car is, Taylor Burris. So you can get used to the white and black machine that the man from Washington, D.C. will be driving all season long here in Monday Night Racing, too.
Yeah, kicked off his ARCA Menard Series East career at New Smyrna earlier back in this month in February. As we continue on, didn't have the greatest of starts, but is hoping to capitalize later on this season, as he's currently doing a great job running inside the top 5, holding off DJ Cummings in that 4th position right there as they work. And as I see, I think somebody's engine might have expired on the track as they'll come down pit road.
Keep an eye here. Looks like maybe an issue for Dylan Welch, who ends up with nose damage, 2 heavy contact into one of the walls. We'll see if we might be able to get a replay on that and see what happened with Dylan, but he's already used up one of his fast repairs and gets that car fixed up. But that's the kind of thing that you can have happen here. You mentioned it. As we take a look at the replay, we can see what happened exactly with Dylan Welch, Blake McCandless. But you talked about a corner exit here tends to be where you see so many issues left and right. And I have a hunch, yep, catches the apron just a little bit and gets a little bit loose, tries to save it, and then checks up in front of the 36 and pounds that inside wall. That's the first time we've seen that happen this evening, Blake. I have a pretty good feeling it won't be the last.
No, certainly not. And the reason that was caused was obviously Welch got very loose off the corner. You see it quite often here, kind of a push loose as you get towards the wall in the exit of turn 2. And unfortunately, Welch, he checks up. You're carrying so much speed that unfortunately Garrett Miller, who was running behind him, not able to back off. But the biggest development out of that is our championship points leader coming into tonight, Nick DeGroot, the defending champion of Monday Night Racing. He got a little bit of left rear damage in that. I don't think it's enough to significantly hurt his race car, but he did definitely get tagged on the left rear, so we'll have to see if Nick DeGroot's going to be able to rebound from that early trouble, and if we stay green here, if he's thinking about maybe using that fast repair a little ways down the road.
The question will be whether or not the damage is enough, though I would think that this being Dover, if your nose is clean, the rear damage isn't necessarily going to do you that much harm. So we'll just keep our eyes peeled. Also of note, Shane Van Gisbergen running the Red Bull colors, just like he's Holden in the Australian Supercars Championship. Not too far back either. He's in the mix as well, just behind Nick DeGroot in 24th. We'll keep our eyes and what the 97 does over the course of the evening. But maybe biggest story early on, Anthony Alfredo gone. This is one of the biggest leads I've seen as we ride on board with Nick Sanchez. Pretty good battle just a little bit further back. But this is one of the largest leads I've seen anyone jump out to in any of the Monday Night Racing events we've had in Season 2 up to this point, Taylor Burris. We've had big leads, but they haven't necessarily come this early. And Alfredo is already a second and a half clear of Will Rogers for Space Station Racing and Gaming within 15 laps.
He certainly has, and this is a good opportunity for drivers such as Anthony Alfredo and Will Rogers, who have that little bit of a gap to the rest of the field, to kind of preserve their tires, take care of their equipment, so that way later on into the run, they can be able to still stay competitive while other cars may be struggling for grip late in the going. So we'll have to keep an eye, and actually Anthony Alfredo is actually close to catching up to the tail end of the lead lap field, so he's going to be putting the cars a couple of laps down here in a few moments.
Everybody, you take a look at this battle. This is fourth on back. Russia Karut sort of pacing this group, but it really starts right around the fifth spot. That's where DJ Cummings and Nick Sanchez are absolutely all over each other, trying to figure out who wants to take fifth. Ruben Garcia is waiting in the wings. He's there. Gabe Wood is also there. Garrett Smithley is in that too. And Dylan Welch has cycled back in. He's a few laps down, 3 to be precise, but he's also at least physically present in this, even though he has scored 34th for the time being.
Scored 3 laps down as we take a look on board here with Kyle Busch. Started kind of where he's running right now in the 9th position, running in 10th right now, but this is just such a good masterclass of how to drive at Dover. A driver who's very successful in it, and even a couple of drivers, you see Garrett Smithley in front of him. This is kind of their bread and butter. This obviously, here at Monday Night Racing, one of the nice things is we see so many different types of cars, so many different types of tracks, but obviously this is stock cars, cup cars at Dover. This is exactly what these guys are meant to do. And you see many of the stock car guys up here at the front of the field. We talked about Anthony Alfredo. Obviously, he is still just checking out. But Will Rogers, Ryan Vargas, you see Smithley and Kyle Busch up here in the top 10. All of these stock car guys are in their wheelhouse, and they're showcasing exactly why.
Stock car guys or sim stock car guys, I think, in Raja Karut's case, because the story has been pretty well told, I think, how Raja wanted to go racing, but the family didn't quite have the funding to go real-life short-track racing, so his parents bought him a sim instead, and Raja built his name in iRacing running these Cup Series cars, especially in the NASCAR iRacing Series, the series that runs periodically throughout the week, but runs 50% races as opposed to the usually about 10 to 15% length races that you see in a fixed and a little bit longer in a open. So this is Raja's bread and butter as we get our first yellow flag of the evening, and all contact with about 3 or 4 cars right around the spin spot. Ruben Garcia got sent into another car right at the end of pit road, and it was right near that gap in the wall that Garcia made contact, I believe, with one of the cars that got sent down to the inside. But Garrett Miller was the one who went sideways, and it looks like the 50 machine just had absolutely nowhere to go. Gabe Wood pounds and T-bones Miller and careened off into Garcia, who then got hit by Garrett Smithley, and Garcia went over once and a half and landed on all 4 wheels impressively, but a wild ride there after the yellow flag had come out.
How about Dylan Welch and Kyle Busch avoiding that wreck? If we can get an onboard screen of Dylan Welch's camera when he was coming off of turn 4 and seeing this incident. Here's Kyle Busch right now, as you'll see what will happen to him as he's coming out of turn 4. He narrowly avoids this incident that happens to him, and a great job of heads-up driving, watching where these cars are going, and as we talked about, the cars come right back down the racetrack, even if they go up towards the wall.
That's just, you got so much momentum that there's absolutely nothing you can do as you see all the chaos there in front of Kyle Busch. A nice job by Busch to slow down and make sure that he doesn't run over anybody or anything. But things happen quickly here, and I think it's an obvious point, Blake McCandless, but it's one worth reiterating because I think, especially when it comes to Dover, it's one that a lot of people tend to forget. You don't realize how fast these cars are moving for this size of racetrack until you see incidents like this happen where your reaction times almost have to be super speedway level a la Talladega or Daytona in order to avoid getting damaged.
Well, the one thing here is things move so fast here at Dover, but the biggest difference between this track and a track like Daytona or Talladega is the amount of space you have to work in. The straightaways here in particular are so confined, and that's exactly why this incident happened with Garrett Miller. He was trying his best to try and save that race car. He was sliding it left, sliding it right, and eventually the drivers behind him, they don't know where he's going to be because there's just not a whole lot of room to go. So unfortunately, Miller is on the bottom half of the racetrack. Everybody behind him saw him kind of swerving left and swerving right, trying to save the car, and there's just not a whole lot of room to go. Fortunately enough, a couple of drivers were able to drive through that. We mentioned Kyle Busch, Garrett Smithley. David Schildhouse looks like he was able to check up in time and avoid that carnage, but it's a topic that we talk about a lot here at Dover, is especially on the backstretch and on the front straightaway, just how small of room it is for these guys to try to maneuver around something. I think it was, 4 or 5 years ago, that restart wreck that we saw in the Cup Series here, just nowhere to go, and that's something that we talk about more at Dover than probably anywhere else on the schedule.
We'll see if we get more incidents like that over the course of the evening. But for now, we'll take a quick commercial break and be back with more Monday Night Racing right after this. You're watching the Big Green Egg 125 from Dover International Speedway on Podium eSports.
There's a place where fire and flavor are celebrated, where grilling traditions and new techniques are perfected. Here in Big Green Egg Country, you can grill it, roast it, smoke it, or bake it. It's the most versatile grill you'll ever own. Simple to light, easy to use, comes with a free lifetime warranty. Have it delivered to your door by a certified dealer in your community and start enjoying the ultimate cooking experience. Shop online for home delivery at BigGreenEgg.com. That's BigGreenEgg.com.
Welcome back to coverage of the Big Green Egg 120 here at Dover International Speedway on Podium eSports. James Pike, Taylor Burris, Blake McCandless, and our producer Ryan Bauer bringing you all the action from this, the first race of the round of 10 in the Monday Night Racing playoffs. We should be back to green flag racing next time by. It'll be Anthony Alfredo and Will Rogers for Space Station Gaming, running a scheme pretty much identical to Vicente Salas's in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing series. But I think very impressive, and we'd be remiss not to touch on this, Taylor Burns. The amount of effort that Space Station Gaming has put in to get affiliates involved, to get the Justin Knoblauchs and get the Jake Fishers and company. You see these schemes not just in the Coke series, they're in other places in the sim as well, and they're really trying to get their name out there and make the most of the presence that they've gained here in 2021 joining the Coke series.
Well, the thing that we're talking with Will Rogers about the Space Station Gamings is that they're not just wanting to be a Coke team. They want to be a eSports team and have a developmental program, working drivers into the Road to Pro, the Pro Series, to where they can possibly have their drivers competing for the top level in all of eNASCAR, which is the eNASCAR iRacing Coca-Cola Series. So it's very critical and actually a smart move for these drivers to consider this.
Oh, they tried to gain the restart at the front, and Alfredo and Rogers played chicken with one another a little bit. That stacked up Nick Sanchez pretty badly behind them. Sanchez gives up about 10 car lengths before they get to the first turn, but Raja Caruth was right on it and nailed his restart, so he'll slide into second, and we'll see if Caruth on fresh tires can go after Anthony Alfredo for the race lead.
We'll see if he can do it, and you already see it throughout the field. These guys get sorted out very quickly here at Dover. We don't quite see that high side coming into play just yet, so it looks like you want to be on the bottom, but again, with all the speed, the grip that's out there with these cool temperatures, you want to dime in the corner a little bit. You don't want to just ride right along the apron on the bottom, and I think you could see Caruth up there. You see exactly what I'm talking about. Moves up about half a lane and then cuts down and gets through on exit, and I think that's going to make it hard to pass for a little bit, but obviously as the tires continue to wear, you can't avoid that at Dover. That's where you're going to see a lot of moves being made later on.
It's just a tough place to get around, and I think these cars spread out because everybody's so mindful of making sure that they don't bend these cars on corner exit into the wall in either one of turn 2 or turn 4. You're racing the track almost as much as you're racing the competition here at Dover, and I think more so than you would at a lot of other places of the NASCAR Cup Series schedule, as you get some of the great static shots across the board here. And we now turn our attention to DJ Cummings, the 10 machine, who rides in P4 just behind Will Rogers.
He certainly is trying to get a good run off turn 4, takes a peek to the outside, but under heavy pressure, though, from Nick Sanchez. He'll wash up the racetrack, get past for that fourth position, actually, now, as he slots back into 5th, trying to now see if he can make a crossover move, but decides to think better of it. A little bit of damage to the rear bumper, though, of Nick Sanchez, as he's going to try to see if he can keep that, not using that fast repair early in the going like some of his other competitors have had to use.
I wonder if Sanchez might have picked up that damage on the restart just with the way everybody checked up behind him especially. He did not get going by comparison to the Alfredos, the Rogers, the Caruths that were up there with him, and now slides a little bit up the racetrack to hit that diamond like Blake talked about, but also has a rearview mirror that is still full of DJ Cummings.
Yeah, Sanchez has not been able to pull away after making that pass. Cummings trying to get back down to the bottom, but you see Sanchez, he slips up off the corner, and this is what just makes Dover such a hard racetrack, that any little mistake can make a huge difference. And what you're able to do. Cummings and Sanchez that last time, they both clipped the apron off of turn 4. That's going to lose them a ton of time. It's just one of those things. There's just not a whole lot of room or margin for error here at this racetrack.
Especially when you're running as close as you are, as fast as you are. The other thing I'm noticing, though, Taylor Burris, and it goes back to a point that Blake made, is that on this second run in particular, we're seeing more drivers dime the racetrack, and that's beginning to open up the second groove. There's more rubber that's being laid down on the middle of these turns, and that may make it a little bit easier for these drivers to try and race. If you got more grip up top, it can become a viable lane here. It just takes a little while for that middle groove to come in.
It certainly does, and we're going to see that groove start to work where we'll see drivers actually utilizing the outside lane more so than the bottom lane. So drivers are going to be trying to make sure that they go up a little bit higher, maybe half a lane to maybe a quarter, 3/4 of a lane up in the middle of the corners in order to help build the rubber up on the top side of the racetrack, which will be very critical as we now continue to watch this battle right now for the 4th position.
Looking back at Kyle Busch, who rides in 6th. James Davison just behind him in 7th. As you get another look at some of the cameras behind Dougie Beard, and lots of competition, especially in the back half of the top 10, and especially just behind Kyle Busch. You look back, David Schildhouse has had a rear view mirror completely full of Garrett Smithley's number 52 for about the last 5 laps, and Smithley has not let go of the Gamer Advantage Chevy Camaro that Schildhouse is piloting here, just trying to make a move. As Schildhouse now gets to the inside of Kyle Busch and will try and take away the 8th spot and bring Garrett Smithley in tow.
Well, that was really a case of Kyle Busch was trying to make a move on James Davison, wasn't able to quite do it. Davison takes advantage, and now here comes Kyle Busch with the crossover once again. Schildhouse now stuck to the top side of the racetrack as Rowdy tries to get it done on the bottom. And there you see Schildhouse. That's a smart move by David there. Diamonds the corner on the outside, puts Kyle Busch on the inside. He's not able to hold on to it, so Busch will go back to 8th, Smithley to 9th, and then Gabe Wood even looked to make a move around TJ Majors. It's a nice little healthy battle going on from about 7th on back.
Really good battles in the back half of this top 10. It's the closest racing we're seeing anywhere in the field. There's another little pack, about 20th or so. Preston Partis, Chad Reed and company having some good fights, but this group here from Davison on is your best battle on track. It's about maybe 7 or 8 cars separated by maybe a second, if that.
If that, I mean, you could probably stick about 10 cars under this blanket right here. And how about Shane Van Gisbergen running in the 15th position after starting 33rd? He's definitely one of our biggest movers here tonight as you ride on board with him. Coming out of turn number 2, trying to get to the back bumper of Ryan Vargas, who I believe suffered a little bit of a speeding penalty off exit of pit road during that last caution. So he has a little bit of work to do right now there, James.
A little bit of work to do, but if you don't know about Shane Van Gisbergen, and I figure a lot of our American-based audience might not necessarily know how big of a star he is down in Australia, making his Monday Night Racing debut tonight. We've already talked about him a little bit, but he will wheel just about anything as we get a yellow flag incident over on the front straightaway. Brandon Brown in trouble, and a few other cars sideways as well. Chad Reed also caught up in this.
Chad Reed, tough break for him. We're throwing some new colors on that number 22 Ford Mustang. Normally running just a straight black Ford Mustang, but out there with the different colors out there as he just clips the wall off of turn 4 and then makes hard contact with Steve Affont as well as Brandon Brown. As right there, and we'll see what will happen to him as he comes down pit road to get a faster pair.
Something that Blake's talked about, just caught the apron, got to the gas too quick, bounced off the fence, and careened back onto the racetrack. There was nothing Brandon Brown could have done. He was just an innocent bystander who was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yes, he was, and even the 11 car, you can see right behind Chad Reed as he smacks the outside retaining wall off of turn 4. He doesn't really have anything to do either. He just stops so violently when you hit that wall. It slows you down so much. We'll get a nice onboard shot of it right here. You see that car in front going to hit the wall, instantly stops and cuts right across your nose. Not even time to react. And, of course, again, what we talked about here at Dover, tight confines. A hit to the inside pit wall with that safer barrier throws you all the way across the racetrack. Luckily, it doesn't seem like it takes anybody else out. Of course, Brandon Brown got a piece of it, but that's just a case of Dover racing. You get a little bit too high off the corner, and very quickly it can go poorly. As you see, even the 78, oh man, what a job he did driving through that wreck. about got tagged by about 3 different cars, I believe, was on my counter. But nice job there by Greg Stumpf to maneuver clear of all that carnage.
A tight one for the man behind off-axis paint and the neon machine, very 80s vibes. I have a feeling that somewhere he and Harris Lou are kindred spirits. We know how much Harris loves his Fox Body Mustangs, and even he's got a few cars in this field that he's designed as well, both for Team NASCAR, as it were. DJ Cummings and Matt Stallknight running some of Harris's schemes. We'll take another moment to step aside and bring you a quick commercial break, but more action coming your way from Dover International Speedway right after this. You're watching coverage of Monday Night Racing presented by Tufco Flooring on Podium eSports.
We are an industrial flooring company specializing in custom floors and drains. We don't believe in the one-size-fits-all approach to flooring, and neither should you. When you choose Tufco, we consult with you about your needs, industry requirements, and factor in numerous variables. After assessing your facility, we engineer your floor and drains, then install everything ourselves. That's the Tufco way. Visit our website at tufcoflooring.com.
Welcome back to coverage of Monday Night Racing. It's the Big Green Egg 120 from Dover International Speedway here on Podium eSports as we get set for a restart coming around lap 42 of 120, just a third of the way through things as we get set to go back racing. I do want to touch, because right before that yellow flag came out, we were talking a little bit about Shane Van Gisbergen making his Monday Night Racing debut. And for people who don't get the chance to pay attention to the Australian Supercar Series, one, you're missing out. It's one of the best forms of racing in all the world and a personal favorite of mine to watch. But two, this guy Shane's pretty good. 40 wins out of 417 starts throughout his career. The 2016 championship with the folks at Triple Eight Race Engineering, and he's also done a whole bunch of racing elsewhere in the world too. It's not just supercars. It's the Bathurst 12-hour, it's the 24 hours of Daytona. He's been a GTD competitor. He's run the 24 hours of Spa, the 12 hours of Sebring, and oh, by the way, also pretty good at this whole racing thing across the board. And to top it all off, the defending Bathurst 1000 champion too, Taylor.
He certainly is, and he's actually going to be ready to kick it off and try to make another run at the Bathurst when the season of the V8 Supercars kicks off later on in March. So it's going to be exciting. So if people out there who never got to see what the V8 Supercars are like, go and watch it. You will not be disappointed. Take it a step higher than NASCAR racing, but on road courses all the time.
The cars are very similar to the stock cars, and a lot of what this Gen 6 package has become, a lot of bits and pieces have been derived from the Australian supercars, and in the next gen car too. More pieces we can talk about in a little bit, but we'll get back to green flag racing, and off we go with Roger Carruth and Will Rogers, who lead us to green as Anthony Alfredo had trouble, got hit with a speeding penalty. So we're going to see how well he blitzes through the field, but it's Carruth and Rogers who are first and second coming back to turn 3.
They are the top two, and again, they have done a nice breakaway here from the field. And even one of the things that's nice about iRacing here is a lot of drivers after a run, they'll post their tire wear. You can see the percentage of wear that the drivers will have. Now, of course, they can fib it or they can be honest, but that last run, it was Will Rogers who had slightly better tires than Roger Carruth that last time. And if Rogers can keep up this speed and save those tires a little bit, I don't think it'll be too much longer before we see that 55 out front.
If we're playing Alfredo watch, as I think we have to, given how strong he was in the first half of this race, 22nd after restarting, I believe, 29th when we came back to the green flag. So he's having a pretty good day for himself so far. And even with the setback, there's pace there to burn, and he is still one of the fastest cars on the racetrack. Last time by, a 21.863. He was the only one in that zip code besides Nick Sanchez and Garrett Smithley. So might be buried, but he is flying. Meanwhile, Sanchez trying to pressure Roger Carruth to take over P1.
He certainly is. Was able to get around Will Rogers for that second spot. He's going to take a peek to the inside as they work down the front straightaway heading into turn one. Gets right there, almost gets to the inside, but has to think better of it as he's just right on the back bumper of Raja Karuth as they come off turn two, sideways actually for him.
He was sideways. He tried to get back on the gas too quickly, and that cost him about a 10 and maybe 2 or 3 car lengths. And instead of Sanchez pressuring Karuth, it's now Will Rogers trying to pressure the 96.
Will Rogers trying to pressure the 96. How about James Davison, who has very quietly worked his way up into the top 5 here at Dover? We think of him and his prowess in the Indy cars, obviously. Had a nice solid run this weekend at the Daytona Road Course, the NASCAR Cup Series as well, and perhaps showing he's taking a liking to these stock cars as he runs up here in P4 right behind this 3-car battle for the lead.
You get a really good look at this group here and a good view of the battle that you see in front of you. That's all for the race lead right there between Karuth and Sanchez and Rogers. And oh, by the way, if we're talking about James Davison, not to harp on the supercars connections, but Davison happens to be a cousin of fellow Bathurst 1000 champion Will Davison too. So more than a few Australian influences in tonight's field, but we'll keep an eye on this race lead battle as Nick Sanchez continues to run the wall and just about caught it on the exit of 2 that last time by, but he is all over Raja Karuth for P1.
He certainly is putting the pressure on, and is about 4 cars, soon to be 5 cars when you throw in DJ Cummings into this battle for the race lead as they dive it into turns 1 and 2. Rogers looks to the inside. Sanchez decides to go to the top side of the racetrack. Feels like he can make it work, but Karuth will hold on to the inside lane down the back straightaway.
Karuth is there. I almost wonder if Sanchez has pressed these tires so hard, even the first 10 laps in this green flag run, if maybe, just maybe, he might be burning off his rubber quicker than even we thought, and it might be an opportunity for Will Rogers to maybe make something happen, but Rogers clipped the apron and just about sent the 96 spinning right in front of the field in the middle of the corner. That was as close as we've come to a yellow flag without actually getting an incident all night, at least within the top 5.
That is such heads-up driving there from Nick Sanchez, because he could see Rogers hit the apron as he almost got into Raja Karuth there. He gave him a bump about 3 or 4 laps ago getting into turn 3. And I tell you what, Nick Sanchez
trouble a little bit further, though, on the back straightaway. It looks like Stolnut goes around, and he got help. There was somebody else there. It's David Schildhouse in the 20 car, but the 20 and the 41 sideways of the back straightaway brings out our 3rd yellow flag of the evening. And just looking at this one, we'll get the replay for you all momentarily, but looks like might have been a little bit of contact between TJ Majors and David Schildhouse. The E-spotter and the real-life spotter coming together on the backstretch, Taylor Burris, and the E-spotter gets the worst of it.
Yeah, Kyle Busch also involved in the incident, along with Shane Van Gisbergen and a couple of other drivers trying to avoid the incident. As we know, Dover is one of those self-cleaning racetracks, and once you go up to that outside wall, you're going to go right back down to the bottom of the racetrack very quickly. So heads up driving by several of them, but unfortunately, some of these drivers are going to have to use that fast repair that they did not want to have to use this early on.
Fast repair for sure for David Schildhouse and for Matt Stolnick. The field will come down pit road for service, and I don't think we're going to see anybody try and play the games here. Tires are so valuable at this racetrack, Blake McCandless. Anytime you get a yellow 10 laps after a subsequent yellow, or a preceding yellow rather, you're coming in for 4 tires pretty much no matter what.
That is going to be the case for the majority of this field. Obviously, when we get later into these laps as they continue to wind down, may not be quite as clear-cut on whether you want to come down and get 4 fresh Goodyear Eagles or not, but we're not even at the halfway marker of this race. Don't think anybody is on that limit of tires, so I'd imagine that for the most part here, you're exactly right. Miles the Monster loves to chew up these tires, and everybody's going to come down. You see Raja Karuth there win the race off pit road.
Karuth wins it. We'll see if Garrett Miller decides to come down this time by, but Miller at least staying out for the moment. So if that holds, he would be the race leader, but we figure he'll probably come in at some point. But at this stage, it's time to turn our attention to our Bryant Stock Technologies in-race reporter, Matt Stolnick, in the 41 with us. And Matt, we hate to bring you in on such circumstances, but what did you see in front of you in that last yellow?
Yeah, I don't know. We were all stacked up there in a pack, and the 20 just pounded the wall, and I just didn't have anywhere to go. The track is just so narrow that when something like that happens ahead of you, you don't really have any time to react or really anywhere to go, even if you did have time to react. So really unfortunate. Had a great run going. We were cruising up through the field, started 18th, got it up to 9th or 10th there, but used a faster pair and see what we can get here. Took 2 tires, try to get some track position. Just unfortunate.
For those who don't know, we'd like to take the in-race reporter feature within these races and gives the drivers themselves a chance to tell a little bit more about what they do, and especially somebody like yourself. Folks probably get that you work in the big tower in uptown Charlotte as part of NASCAR's headquarters, but what does your role entail in the 9 to 5?
Yeah, absolutely. So I work in marketing communications for NASCAR. Basically, that means I'm tasked with promoting the sport and kind of helping it grow on a marketing side. Basically, it's kind of just involves, working with our many media outlets that cover the sport, making sure that, they've got all the right info that they need to cover it properly and drive some positive storytelling around the sport. And also expose the sport to some new audiences, new media outlets, things of that nature. So a lot of fun. Been doing it since 2017 and want to be here for a long time.
I think there are a lot of people who don't realize that when you read an article on a website or in a newspaper or on a magazine, there are a lot of folks that go into making stories like that possible beyond the person with the byline at the very top. There's a lot of help, not only from the organization side, but from NASCAR's side as well. The folks at NASCAR, especially with the Integrated Marketing and Communications Department, do a lot of work, and Matt Stolnick's one of the folks that tends to help with that. Matt, we'll let you get back to it, get ready for the restart, but thanks for the time, and we'll chat with you a little bit later.
You got it, guys.
That's Matt Stolnick in the 41 machine, who will restart 20th as we come back to green flag action right around the halfway point of this race. Restart to come on lap 58 of 120, so we are due for a midway race break momentarily. But it'll be Carruth, Rogers, Nick Sanchez, James Davison, Garrett Smithley into the top 5 for the first time this evening. Then Gabe Wood, TJ Majors, Shane Van Gisbergen with the continual climb up to P8 now, and then Kyle Busch and Ryan Vargas. So a lot of NASCAR influence, maybe not a huge surprise, Taylor Burns, that we have lots of NASCAR influence in the top 10 as Carruth gets set to bring us back to green flag racing. He and Rogers both get great restarts, and they will be door to door heading off into turn 1.
They certainly will as they work their way down into turn 1. You'll see Carruth go to the inside, easily maintain the race lead as Rogers will slot back in behind. Meanwhile, the rest of the field starting to get a little bit single file, except for the battle for 7th between Van Gisbergen and Gabe Wood as Wood goes to the top side of the racetrack.
Wood all the way almost to the outside retaining wall as we have another caution here on the back straightaway. 2 cars parked to the inside here. I believe it's Brett Baldeck who is parked here. Looks like he may have gotten loose. Mark Rebelis was also on the inside wall. Dylan Welch also involved. He's had a rough go of it here tonight. So a couple of cars get collected in this one.
Couldn't tell where this started exactly. I saw Brett Baldeck, looks like Baldeck and Rebelis both got loose on corner exit out of turn 2 and went sideways. And Baldeck tried to catch it, ended up overcorrecting and steering right into Dylan Welch, who burns through yet another fast repair. So tough luck for the 14 machine. Dylan Welch has not had much of it this evening, and then DJ Cummings right at the very end gets swept up as Baldeck slides across the racetrack. Teammate to Matt Stolnick, DJ Cummings, incidentally over in the fence, so he'll probably take a fast repair as well.
That's some big championship implications right there as DJ Cummings is trying to make sure he can get into the round of 10 here, and that's going to be very interesting to see. Can he recover from that and be able to stay out of trouble later on in the going?
Everybody staying out this time around, and Blake McCandless, if you want to take a moment to reset, and Taylor, you can, because it is now time for us to bring you right on cue the iRacing Midway Race Break, which as always is brought to you by iRacing, the world's premier online racing game. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat to experience today's newest form of competitive motorsport, virtual racing, all from your home PC. Race virtually in Australian supercars, IndyCar, IMSA, NASCAR, the World of Outlaws, and more. Raja Carruth is your race leader in the number 6 NASCAR Technical Institute Chevrolet Camaro. Will Rogers for Space Station Gaming runs second. Third is the 96 of Nick Sanchez. James Davison rides in 4th. 5th is the 52 of Garrett Smithley. TJ Majors runs 6th. 7th belongs to the 50 of Gabe Wood, playoff contender. Shane Van Gisbergen in his Monday Night Racing debut. The Australian Supercar star runs 8th. 9th is two-time NASCAR Cup Series champion Kyle Busch. And 10th is one of the winningest drivers this season in Monday Night Racing, the XSET content creator and driver for Front Row Motorsports, and the man who dominated the first half of this race, Anthony Alfredo. Taylor.
Robbie Lyons sits in the 11th position, followed by NASCAR Xfinity Series driver Ryan Vargas. Max Cannon will be sitting in the 13th position, followed by NASCAR Xfinity Series driver and SCCA champion Preston Pardus in 14th. Kobe Moore sits in 15th, followed by Monday Night Racing Season 1 champion Nick DeGroot in 16th. Ford Martin sits in the 17th position, followed by Matt Stallnet in 18th. 19th is Devin Henry, and Michael Massey's rounds out your top 20, Blake.
Jason Keffer runs in 21st. 22nd is Ruben Garcia. 23rd, as timing and scoring is updating here under the caution flag. Once again, Greg Stumpf is in 23rd. 24th goes to Justin Malillo. 25th is Steve Offent. And then how about 26th? DJ Cummings came in right at that cut line, tied for 7th. Cummings runs in the 26th position. Brett Baldick is in 27th. 28 goes to Garrett Miller. 29th is Dylan Welch, and then David Schildhouse, after being involved in the caution right before this, he runs in 30th, James.
Mark Rabillas is the last car on the lead lap. He's 31st. 32nd is Brandon Brown, Chad Reed, Ron D'Amico, and Drew Welker. The final 3 cars scored this evening. And that concludes your iRacing Midway Race Break for this Big Green Egg 120. With over 170,000 drivers on the service and over 90 laser scan traction cars to choose from, iRacing is your portal to the racing world. Get on track today at iRacing.com. Now, this track might be a little bit too fast for the car, but I don't know if you saw it, Taylor Burris, but a new short track late model, super late model car in the works. iRacing shared the 3D model that they built, and one of those 2 cars, iRacing's got a late model and a super late model. One of them is going to get updated to spec with the new 5-star body and the molding that makes those cars a little bit more akin to the Gen 6 cars you're seeing on screen here.
Certainly is. And also another thing that possibly is coming in the near future, we saw it during the Fox broadcast, is Bristol Dirt. Of course, with the NASCAR series going to Bristol Motor Speedway on the dirt, of course, iRacing has to get involved with that and make sure that we have the dirt configuration for Bristol. So another exciting thing to come in the near future for the iRacing service.
Lots of fun to be had as we get set for a whole big world of dirt racing towards the end of March. The Cup Series goes dirt racing for the first time in over 50 years when they get to Bristol at the end of next month. But for now, our attention lies in Dover, Delaware, as Roger Caruth gets us back to green flag racing in the second half of this race is underway. Good restart for Caruth, and Will Rogers, Nick Sanchez clear 2, so the first side-by-side battle falls to James Davison and Garrett Smithley for 4th and 5th.
The Rick Ware Racing teammates now with Smithley. He'll fall just a little bit back of James Davison, who runs in the 4th position. Will Rogers did not get quite the launch that he did on that initial start that we had just a time ago, but Will Rogers right now making up some good time. And then how about Nick Sanchez? We talked last run about just how aggressive he was being, not saving a whole lot of tires, but he is trying to get that track position and get it very quickly.
Track position on a restart, never a bad thing to try and go after. It's single file for the most part, save for, Max Cannon was looking to the outside of Brian Vargas and then thought better of it. So it's Shane Van Gisbergen and Kyle Busch that are together. Van Gisbergen's got a little bit of nose damage as they go door to door down the back straightaway and make contact. They nearly bounce off of one another, but everybody's starting to fan out right about 9th, 10th, where those 2 are. That's where the battle really begins, as one car pounds the inside wall. It's the 15 machine of Kobe Moore, but he stays out of the racing line, so we'll stay green flag racing, Taylor.
Tough break right there for Kobe Moore right now, as he now will leave the track and get a tow. As we take a look at the replay, looks like a little bit of contact between himself as well as the number 21 of Max Cannon. That'll send him into the inside barriers right there, and will send him out of today's race for the most part. But a little bit of beating and banging between the 2 champions of Van Gisbergen and Kyle Busch. Pretty exciting to see 2 champions going at it here at Dover.
Big moves there as you watch Big Sanchez right on board with your race leader, Raja Caruth. Sanchez makes quick work of Will Rogers, who goes quickly down to the inside to block James Davidson. And I wonder if Sanchez might have been set off a little bit. Rogers absolutely sent it down into turn one a few laps ago and parked it just about right in front of the 96 machine, who gets into Raja Caruth and puts the chrome horn on the 6 car to take over the race lead. Nick Sanchez in the 96 car to the point. And oh, by the way, for those wondering, Anthony Alfredo, after that speeding penalty he got about 30 laps ago, he's already up to 5th and is within striking distance of the leaders as well, Blake.
I was about to say, didn't Anthony Alfredo just restart at the back of this field? I don't know, 2 restarts ago. It is unbelievable to think he's in the top 5 as he turns James Davison. Davison is around. Garrett Smithley is around in front of the field. That's going to collect 3-4 cars here in the middle of turns 3 and 4 as Anthony Alfredo hard charging to the front. Didn't seem to mind going through. He was just out there for a drive, and unfortunately Davison slightly higher on the racetrack than him. We'll get a nice onboard shot right here. You're going to see Davison run a little bit higher. Alfredo's going to go to the bottom, take all that momentum, and just gets into the back of the 51.
Big mess over in turn 4. A lot of cars caught up in this. Matt Stolnick was involved. Garrett Smithley in trouble. I think TJ Majors was up in the fence. Gabe Wood, playoff contender, involved in this one. Looking to see Ford Martin barely squeeze through. Might be able to get a good on board, but this was a legitimate track blocker, Taylor Burris. Once the rest of the field got over to turn 4, everybody that was well back in the field had to come to a complete standstill in order to get through the incident.
Look at Ford Martin trying to daze the thunder through and just nearly, I think a little bit of contact, but I got to say some great driving right there for Ford Martin as you watch that replay, but a great job for them. But we'll see the incident right there as we go above to see what Ford Martin had to go through. But yeah, a lot of issues happening, causing the track to be blocked up, which is very understandable here, of course, as we see the hard hit back there as he just goes through the parted seas right there between those 2 cars.
The Days of Thunder quote applies. I also feel like there's an alternative application that you could use of the great Ayrton Senna quote. If you go for a gap that no longer exists, then you are no longer a racing driver. Something to that effect. Ford Martin went for the gap before it closed and made it work. Took advantage of any and all space that he could find after taking the shot from Devin Henry, who had no luck, got on the brakes, and just got a windshield full of TJ Majors torn up race car. So lots of folks burning the faster pairs here, Blake McCandless, but a big incident to reset this field. The biggest yellow we've had all night by a landslide, at least up to this point.
And the thing is, again, this wreck happens. You mentioned drivers stopping, but, we really kind of have secondary accidents happen because everybody comes to a stop. I see David Schildhouse right here, the Gamer Advantage Chevrolet. He comes to a good stop for this wreck, waiting for the carnage to clear, and Michael Massey comes into the back of him, not able to slow down his Chevrolet in time before he gets run into here. You'll see a really nice look at it here. Schildhouse knows the caution is out. You can see the speed coming down. You see the 27 back there, and it looks like Schildhouse just has a target on his back right there.
You get buried in the field and in the group, but it goes back to the point that Blake made earlier, Taylor, that there's just not a lot of room to escape things, and the accordion effect, especially off of restarts, tends to be very, very applicable.
It certainly is, and we're going to see that continuously happen throughout the day here as we continue to see these drivers being a little aggressive on the restarts, which they have to be because that's when the tires are fresh in order to make these needed passes. As we saw some very aggressive driving up towards the front of the field between Sanchez and Raja Caruth, and then of course the incident that happened again between that caused this caution. Certainly a lot of aggressive driving late in the going.
Cars will line up for the restart, and as we do, we'll remind you that tonight's broadcast of Monday Night Racing is brought to you by Max Pappas Innovations. MPI and Monday Night Racing partnered to hold a contest on Twitter for a weekly giveaway, and each and every week, race fans can tweet, including MPI and Monday Night Racing, in their Twitter interactions for their shot to win an MPI gift card. This week's winner with a $25 gift card to MPI is Nicely's Leagues. At Nicely's Leagues gets the award this week as we continue to award fans of Monday Night Racing courtesy of our friends at Max Pappas Innovations, the world's premier manufacturer of steering wheels, founded in 2009 by Max and Tatiana Pappas in Mooresville, North Carolina. MPI takes every aspect of construction and safety to heart to build their products in the most accurate and dedicated way possible. MPI partners have claimed 13 NASCAR championships, 4 World of Outlaws titles, 2 IndyCar championships, 2 Australian Supercars titles, and 1 NHRA championship to boot. And you can find out more information about them at www.maxpappasinc.com. Caution flag came out once again. We delayed the restart a little bit to get everybody organized once again, but it will be Nick Sanchez and Raja Caruth leading this field to green flag racing when we get it, which should come here on lap 72. Just making sure everybody was set up in the back. Don't think anybody in the front has too much damage. Caruth has a little bit on his nose, but and Anthony Alfredo. But I think the biggest question now, Blake, is if you're any one of these front 4, how worried are you now that Alfredo's back in the fray?
I think you have to be very worried. Not only did he race his way through the field, but how quickly he did it. That 38 Big Green Egg Ford Mustang has a lot of speed in it. And of course, we've seen these are the best 4 cars that we've seen out here at Dover tonight. Nick Sanchez, Raja Caruth, Will Rogers, Anthony Alfredo. So it'll be nice to see. We got 45-ish laps to go. We take the green flag. It's going to be really interesting to see who comes out on top because everybody's on even tires. It's a long run in the end. We'll see who's able to get the best of it.
Sanchez and Caruth waiting for their opportunity to go. Sanchez spun the tires a little bit, as did Will Rogers, and it didn't look like it was a clean restart throughout the field. Everybody a little bit slow to get going, so that'll space out everybody. And I think if there's one driver that benefits from that more than any of the folks in this field, Taylor Burris, how about that 38 machine of Anthony Alfredo, who already is checking.
Ooh, trouble right there on the...
Yeah, trouble on the back straightaway. James Davison around, but no yellow flag. He stayed off the racing line, so it's still green flag racing. It's still a really good battle between Caruth and Sanchez and Rogers and Alfredo.
Certainly is, as we watch the replay of what happened to James Davison in that number 51. A little bit of contact between him and the 10 of DJ Cummings. That'll send him around. And continue, unfortunately, that could possibly end his day here at Dover. But meanwhile, back up at the front of the field, you see the tight battle between Caruth and Sanchez. Caruth looks to the inside in turn 1. Will there be contact? Tries to keep it. Big center right there as he turns him in 1 and 2.
He turned Nick Sanchez. He got right into Nick Sanchez and sent him spitting. And the yellow flag comes out once again. And to be honest, with the way that the front 5 had been racing, much less anybody else, I'm a little surprised that it took until about lap 80 before we got an incident like that, Blake McCandless. But that had been coming between some combination of your top 5 drivers for the better part of about 30 laps or so.
Yeah, that was something that was brewing for several laps. We saw Sanchez and Raja had contact a little bit earlier a couple of times, and I'm sure Caruth thought he was on the receiving end of that. This is just one of those cases by Caruth. I'm going to make a move, and I'm going to dare you to make the same move. I mean, now you see Caruth, he gets up, he hits the apron on his own accord. I think Sanchez gave him enough room there. But it's just one of those cases that, you know, when you're racing somebody and you're giving them room, if you feel like they've done you wrong at some point, eventually you're not going to give them that extra inch that maybe you would give somebody else. And unfortunately, you see Rowdy gets caught in the wall right there. A couple more cars get involved in this ensuing chaos. But I think that's just a case of 2 guys who have been racing each other very hard throughout the night. And you know, I don't think Caruth is too upset that maybe he made that mistake and clipped the apron right there.
I have a feeling as you take a look at some of the more shots that we have of this incident on board here with Ford Martin, but I have a feeling that even though, yes, technically Nick Sanchez and Raja Caruth are teammates at Rev Racing with Max Siegel and company, might not necessarily be Christmas cards sent, at least after tonight, Taylor Burris, because they've been racing each other incredibly hard all race long.
Certainly is, and also if you think about it, that could be a possible penalty for Raja Caruth. You know, with the rules here, if you cause a caution here in the Monday Night Racing, you are going to be sent to the tail end of the longest line. Our race control officials here are precariously going over the footage to make sure to see what the situation was, who caused it. So we'll have to keep an eye and see, as it looks like, yep, I believe Carruth will be sent to the tail end of the longest line, possibly.
It's something that race control is looking at. We're waiting for official word there as to whether or not they're going to pin that on Carruth, or if they're going to deem that latest yellow a racing incident. But currently trying to sort through it at the moment, and we'll wait and see whether or not they give him a warning or give him an EOL or something or other. But in the meantime, everybody just working their way around under yellow flags. And oh, by the way, Anthony Alfredo is now going to start on the front row, Blake McCandless, which I feel like is about the last thing a lot of these folks want to see.
I think for some of these drivers, Anthony Alfredo is a driver you don't want to see up here because of how quickly he's moved his way through the field. But one guy, we barely mentioned his name tonight. He started in second, fell all the way back to about the 14th position when we had that long green flag run. And here he is again at the front of the field. JD Motorsports' own Ryan Vargas. He fell back, didn't seem to have a lot of that long run speed, but I know Vargas, longtime veteran of sim racing. I think he was just trying to play it easy, perhaps went a little bit too far in trying to save his tires, but I think he's gotten it together. Vargas definitely going to be really fast in the short runs. We saw how fast he was in qualifying, so I think you even have to throw Vargas here with the number of cautions we had and the fact that we're not going to get a 70 or 80 lap run to end this thing. I think Vargas is another contender for this, and actually there goes Raja Carruth, end of longest line penalty for the number 6.
Changes the game significantly. We'll be back after the short break. You're watching coverage of Monday Night Racing here on Podium eSports.
For years, people had to get professional tools off of a truck.
That's me.
But we know that tool trucks only come around maybe once a week.
You want to go check out what's in my van?
Now Dave knows that his NAPA Auto Parts store delivers parts multiple times a day to his shop, and they carry the professional line of Carlyle tools. Carlyle offers quality tools with a lifetime warranty on its hand tools and a significant savings over mobile tool trucks. And you can forget about the weekly payments and expensive finance charges.
Just pay me, every week for the rest of your life.
Carlyle Tools, as close as your local NAPA Auto Parts store.
Welcome back to coverage of the Big Green Egg 120 from Dover International Speedway. Season 2 of Monday Night Racing, presented by Tufco Flooring, rolls on Podium eSports. This is the first race in the round of 10 in the Monday Night Racing playoffs. Raja Carruth has been sent to the rear for contact with Nick Sanchez, one of the 5 fastest cars all night. Now going to have to make the same charge that Anthony Alfredo did for a speeding penalty earlier in this race. And Alfredo, now your leader once again, and one of the fastest cars in the field still, as you go back to green flag racing on lap 82. He jumps out in front. Will Rogers goes to second. Ryan Vargas slides back to third. So Preston Pardis will try and work his way up to the rear bumper of the number 6 machine. Taylor.
Preston Pardis, of course, got stuck a win away the last time we were in super late models at Michigan, so he could be there to catch these drivers ahead of them off guard and possibly sneak a win away, which could help him guarantee a spot in the next round for the playoffs. So keep an eye on Preston Pardis. He's going to be a sneaky one to watch.
Preston Pardis, who's quietly had speed, won the super late model race at Michigan back in December and has just been there quietly strong, very much a la Matt Selenecht, I think, in a lot of these races. Hasn't necessarily had the luck to get the finishes he's deserved. He's been caught out and caught up into some wrecks in some of the races in between that win of December and now, but where you want to be, I think, at this point in the race is Anthony Alfredo, especially with that damage, isn't quite getting away from the field the way he did when he was clear and clean of everybody at the very beginning of this race. But still out in front as we take a closer look at Justin Malillo riding for the Racing Experts and Front Stretch, new for 2021, Blake McCandless, and owner of the FTF Racing Leagues that you know very well. So Justin's got a lot of eNASCAR connections across the board.
Oh, he certainly does. I think you could pretty much call him the eNASCAR version of Bob Pockrass. If you want any social media efforts regarding eNASCAR, the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series, this is your guy. So great to see Justin Malillo, all the hard work he does, gets to come out here on Monday night and run up in the top 10. There's trouble in Showhouse. Looks like he was involved in it. The 20 Gamer Advantage Chevrolet is spun around here at the exit of turn 4. And once again, the caution is out. And I think that was just the case of our director here of the league, Ford Martin, just somehow got stuck in the safer barrier, and as he was trying to get off of it, you see hard contact into the right side door of David Schildhouse.
It's a close call for Shane Van Gisbergen there, but yeah, I don't think there's much that Schildhouse could have done on that one. Martin just got caught up on the fence and was trying to get his car pulled off of it, and when he did finally get it unglued and free, he came down right into the 20 machine who had nowhere to go, and a close one there for Van Gisbergen, for a few other cars. Jason Keller just managed to sneak through. Dylan Welch somehow snuck to the bottom, and I don't know how he survived. Raja Karuth, though, got the fence trying to avoid all that. So if he hasn't burned his fast repair, I wonder if we may see the 6 machine use it up now.
Possibility that we could be seeing that happen here. I mean, it's a good time to do it. Of course, some drivers may be concerned that there will be more cautions before we get to the end of this race, so they may try and save it to the best of their ability. As you see, almost a close call right there for Dylan Welch as he tried to negotiate through the chaos that ensued before him out entering third and 3 right there. So that's going to be the tough game, James and Blake, is when to come down pit road to utilize that fast repair.
Always the game, I think, here in Monday Night Racing. Yes, you have a fast repair. The question, though, Blake, is when do you use it? Because you can burn it early and get your car fixed back up if you end up with a significant amount of damage. But if you keep the thing rolling and don't have engine damage, I feel like more often than not, you can end up being all right if you hold on for a little bit.
That's exactly the case, and as I've watched along here in Monday Night Racing, I think a lot of these drivers have kind of learned the tricks of the game, so to speak, that you definitely want to save that to the end. A lot of these Monday Night Racing events tend to have more cautions towards the end, so bigger stack-ups, and you don't want to be out of that fast repair by the time that you get to this part of the race. And for most of the race, that's what we've seen. We see Anthony Alfredo, he's got a little bit of right front damage. We know Kyle Busch was riding along for a very long time with some significant front end damage, and I think that's the way that most of these drivers have adapted to using that fast repair throughout the season, that they're willing to hold on to it and maybe even end the race with damage just so they can have it at the end if they need it. So these last 20 laps or so, if you need to use it, that's when you'll see most people come down and get that fast repair. And I think that's something that we've seen, that throughout the season, it's later and later that these drivers will try to hold on to their fast repair, withstand some of that damage so that they can have a clean race car for the end.
Reminds you while we roll around over under yellow that tonight's broadcast of Monday Night Racing is brought to you by Big Green Egg. With Big Green Egg, versatility is the name of the game. You can grill, roast, smoke, bake, and sear on the all-in-one, simple-to-use Big Green Egg. From appetizers and entrees to desserts, the Big Green Egg will exceed all your expectations. And with 7 convenient sizes and a limited lifetime warranty, there's a Big Green Egg to fit any lifestyle. Don't forget to watch the number 9 Big Green Egg Ford Mustang driven by Michael Guest in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series for Jim Beaver eSports, and listen to the Cooks and Cars podcast on Saturday mornings on the Big Green Egg social media channels. Race on over to BigGreenEgg.com for more info and find a dealer nearest you. They also happen to be the sponsor on the car of Anthony Alfredo tonight, who has given them a good ride through the field a few times here. And I would suspect, Taylor Burris, that before we wrap this up, Alfredo is going to have a say in who ends up winning this race.
He certainly is. I mean, let's be honest. Anthony Alfredo has been one of the most dominant drivers this season. I mean, really no one has been able to touch him once he got himself settled in after he broke through with his first win of the Monday Night Racing Season 2. And after that, he has just not looked back whatsoever. A couple of drivers have tried, but many have not succeeded in winning and beating Anthony Alfredo heads up.
Anthony Alfredo has had an incredible amount of pace all night long, but there's some new names here too. Robbie Lyons has not been this far up in the field up to this point as we reach 30 laps to go when they come across the stripe. Shane Van Gisbergen also the highest up he's been in the field as Davison spits the tires pretty well on the banking and didn't get the best of restarts, and he nearly checks up that inside line. Alfredo just about looked to the inside on entry into turn 1, but Davison finally does get it going, but he's got a rear view mirror mirror completely full of the 38 who's trying to go for the race lead.
Ooh, big issue right there between, looks like Robbie Lyons and Shane Van Gisbergen right there. Close call. No major caution yet, but that was almost a caution right there.
Alfredo to the point. He clears James Davison and goes back to P1. Davison back to second. Rogers to third. Side-by-side battles from about sixth on back. Maybe even fifth if you count Robbie Lyons, but it's Shane Van Gisbergen and Nick DeGroot door-to-door.
Door-to-door is Robbie Lyons able to get away directly in front of them, but that 89 of Nick DeGroot starting to finally flex his muscles in this race at the right time. The defending Monday Night Racing champion looking to the inside of Robbie Lyons there in 1 and 2, not able to get it done. Almost clips the apron at the bottom of 1 and 2, but you can just see right there the amount of speed that 89 has. He's going to dive it into 3 and 4, make the move by. So Nick DeGroot now up into the top 5.
Oh, big contact, big wreck for Ruben Garcia. 3-4 cars involved back there, but Garcia's was the first to go around. I think Nick Sanchez is also involved. Indeed, the 96, who was one of the fastest cars in the first half of this race, nowhere to go as Garcia got sideways and just pounded the wall over in 3 and 4. You'll see the replay on your screens here, but got loose. I think there was some contact from Max Kennan in the 21, and Garcia tried to correct it and eventually just put himself right into the fence. Nowhere he could have gone. Greg Stump caught a piece of this as well, got right into the back of Nick Sanchez, and everybody scattered at the exit of turn 4 to make sure they didn't end up in trouble.
A couple of other cars involved with that. Paul Sutton, as well as you ride on board with Greg Stump, as you'll see the incident unfold right in front of him. There's the hard contact, and there it is right there. He makes not as much with Garcia, but makes major contact with Nick Sanchez. So that's going to be definitely a car to go down pit road to get it looked at and fixed.
Just a huge mess in 3 and 4, which has been the trouble corner. I'm a little surprised, Blake, we haven't seen as much action out of turn 2. It seems like 2 ends up having more issues than 4 here, but still, those corners largely identical to one another. In a general sense, not a huge surprise that we've seen cars careening off of each other and clogging up the racetrack on corner exit in those 2 spots.
And that's Dover in a nutshell. You're obviously not going to get in a spot where you see too many wrecks on corner entry unless you're getting into the guy in front of you, but obviously mid to center off here at Dover, that's the trouble spot, and it has lived up to its name for many of these drivers. Also a development there, a restart violation for Kyle Busch is going to put him at the end of the longest line on this next restart.
So Kyle Busch will have to make a charge through the field late. In the meantime, though, we remind you that tonight's broadcast of Monday Night Racing is brought to you by Tufco Flooring, an industrial flooring company specializing in custom floors and drains. Tufco doesn't believe in the one-size-fits-all approach, and neither should you. Tufco listens to your needs and requirements and develops custom solutions for every client. For more information, you can visit their website at www.tufcoflooring.com. Everybody lined up here. See if we might be able to get a word with our Bryant Shock Technologies in-race reporter Matt Stolneck here before we go back to Green Flag Racing. You get an interesting view of that madness. And Matt, again, middle of the field here is the action spot and the place to be if you want to make sure you're completely on your toes. How entertaining has it been to weave your way through some of these incidents that have happened around you?
I'll tell you what, man, it's been a crazy race. I'm just happy that we don't have any damage anymore. I feel like we've dodged every wreck and been a part of a couple that weren't our fault, and just a crazy race tonight. As a driver, you kind of, in a place like Dover, it's kind of out of your hands, quite honestly. You're really just kind of doing everything you can to just get slowed down before they start careening down the racetrack because of the way the banking is shaped and everything. So it feels a little helpless, to answer your question, James.
A little helpless, but for those who haven't had the chance to run Dover, can you talk about the challenge of running here and managing this track when I think by comparison your pace is so quick here just with the way the banking works out?
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I think the rest of this race, whoever's going to win this thing is probably just going to be the person that makes the right pit call at the end, because I think there's going to be a couple more cautions, and it's really going to be about who can manage old tires well, because I think you're going to have to stay out in order to win this thing. So, craziness, man. Should be fun to watch, though.
no fresh tires to win this track position over the rubber. We'll see if that pans out in the final few laps here. But Matt, thanks again. Best of luck. We'll see if you can survive to the end here.
Thanks, guys.
Matt Stolnick, your Bryant Stock Technologies in-race reporter there. He will restart in 19th. He's been sitting around that 20th spot for most of the second half of this race, while Anthony Alfredo will try and leap out in front of the field with his big green egg Ford Mustang the same way he did when we got the initial green flag almost 100 laps ago, entering the final 25 laps with this big green egg 120 at Dover International Speedway. We're off and away once again. Alfredo goes, Rogers to second, move from Davison to get in front of Ryan Vargas to third. Van Gisbergen's going to slide in behind the 89 machine of Nick DeGroot, and so Van Gisbergen will now try and hold off the mechanic for Kyle Busch Motorsports, Max Kennedy in the number 21 car.
He certainly is, as he continues to get the pressure from Max Kennan, that 21. He looks to the inside, trying to hold the outside lane as they dive it into turn one. A little bit of scraping of the wall as he takes the outside lane, surprisingly, allowing Kennan to go to the inside, complete the pass, but right in front of them, Nick DeGroot having a little trouble, slides right up in front of Max Kennan to hold on to that 5th position.
So DeGroot in front of Kennan, nearly got in the back of James Davison. We've seen a lot of drivers get into one another as they've altered their lines in the middle of the corner, especially. Some folks trying to diamond it, like Blake McCandless talked about earlier. Some folks just trying to run the bottom out right. And we've seen some crossover points become points of contact and seen a few cars go around as a result. Whether or not it continues to be that way in the final 20 laps remains to be seen, but certainly something we'll have to watch out for, as Nick DeGroot did not get the best of runs off the corner the last time by. You're right on board with Garrett Smith for you a little bit further back in the field, but DeGroot now opening up the bottom for Max Kennan to come right on through, move Kennan up into 5th.
And a nice move there by Max Kennan as he was able to make his way by. DeGroot got slowed up behind James Davison. And you know what? How about James Davison? Started up here on old tires. Was not able to hold the lead necessarily, but he has done a pretty nice job staying up here in the top 5. You'd think anytime you're on old tires at Dover, you were going to drop like an anchor through this field. But he's done a nice job running his line, making these guys work to get around him. And he's still holding steady up here in the top 5. By the time these tires cool down, they go through maybe another heat cycle or so, that he may be about evened out, or can obviously put it this next caution. So this has been a pretty nice net gain here for James Davison.
The only one on any sort of tire strategy like this in the top 10, in fairness. Everybody else came down about 15, 16 laps ago. The most recent opportunity that the leaders decided to come down for service under a prior yellow flag. Whether or not this pans out for Davison, we'll see, but I think the longer this goes green, the more it may end up hurting him. We'll just see if the track position he gains enough for it to be a net gain at the end of the day. Anthony Alfredo, though, still your race leader, clear by 0.6 of a second ahead of Will Rogers and Ryan Vargas. That trio has begun to separate itself, and then you've got this group of about 4th on back, which you could stretch just about all the way to Kobe Moore and Ford Martin in 12th, all together and within about 1.5 seconds to 2 of one another, as Martin makes a big move to the inside to try and get around Moore, and will do so with ease. Raja Karut trying to cut a hole through this field. He's been swept up in some of the ranks after he got his EOL, so that hasn't necessarily been the kindest of fortunes that these drivers who have been stuck in the middle have had to endure, Taylor. If you get caught in this part of the field, it becomes very difficult to pull yourself out, no matter whether or not you had pace or you had leading speed at the beginning of all this.
Not to try to throw Miles the Monster under the bus, but Miles the Monster here at Dover is not biased. You can be the leading car, the fastest car, or a car that's just trying to survive. This track will eat you up and spit you out with no hesitation whatsoever, and we just have seen that all throughout the night today here at Dover, with some of the biggest names who have been leading this race having to succumb to some major troubles late in the going.
Nick DeGroot just gave up some positions as you ride on board with Max Kennan. We can tell you that Shane Van Gisbergen and DJ Cummings were able to clear the 89 machine, as Kennan now tries to look to the inside of James Davison, who's still out there on the older tires, hanging on to track position, and I think hoping at this stage for a yellow flag that will allow the field to reset and allow him to gain some spots at the end of the day.
Well, I think James Davison is kind of proving right now he's still able to keep up on these old tires. If we get a caution right now, obviously we're working close to that 10 laps to go marker. I think he's showing the field that 2 tires could very well be a decision that these drivers can make if they want to try to make up some track position and be up front towards the end of this race. I think James Davison is a great litmus test on the fact that you do need fresh tires, but you can hang on just long enough if you want to try to make some type of strategy call here at the end of the race.
We'll keep our eyes on Davison, and also of note here as we enter the final 10 laps, if someone decides to stay out or take 2, we could potentially have an option here as one car goes sideways and hard into the wall off the front straightaway. Contact a little bit further back as well, but it looks like Robbie Lyons in the 19 brings us under the yellow flag, and that is precisely the break that James Davison needed.
Certainly did, as we'll take a look at the replay here. Robbie Lyons, and I believe also the 15 of Covey Moore possibly involved in this incident here as well. Coming down the front straightaway here, you'll see the contact. Ooh, actually Ford Martin gets into the wall and just has nowhere to go actually for Robbie Lyons, and then the rest of the incident with Covey Moore getting caught up in that incident. You're right on board with Ford Martin.
Caught Covey Moore, caught Robbie Lyons, caught Matt Stolnick, who I think was the one who got into Covey Moore at the end of all this. Indeed, he was over in turn 1 and 2 after the yellow flag had been thrown and everybody was just trying to get themselves down on pit road. We'll also make note of the fact that everybody just about is coming down pit road for service. About 20 laps on all the tires for your lead lap cars, so not a huge surprise, I think, that we're going to see these folks come in for Fresh Goodyear Eagles. Max Kinnon and Ford Martin staying out at least for the moment. We'll see if that holds, but everybody else in this group, Blake McCambus, in for service.
Well, I think Kinnon is likely going to stay out here. I think Martin, he was in the back. He may come down pit road here, but this is going to be the case. How many drivers will we see take 4 tires? How many will get off of pit road just taking 2? It looks like for the most part, everybody that I'm seeing staying on down here long enough to indicate that they would be taking 4. Anthony Alfredo well off of pit road before anybody else. He may have actually been the only driver, one of the few drivers that may have taken 2 tires here. Actually, no, Raja Karuth, he's going to take 2 as well. So several drivers playing into what we were just talking about. I guess I can just speak these things into existence. Several drivers taking 2.
Or you commentators cursed them into existence, said that we weren't going to have anyone. In fact, we had 3. Anthony Alfredo, 4th, Raja Karuth currently scored 5th, and then Dylan Welch, who currently scored 12th. Those 3 on 2 tires for this next restart. Everybody else on 4. Well, we have a moment under yellow. We'll remind you of some of the upcoming events in the world of iRacing and Podium eSports, and it continues tomorrow night. The second round of the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series from Homestead Miami Speedway, site of many a great championship battle, including the one last November, which saw Nick Ottinger claim his first series championship. We go back to the site of all the madness where Ottinger won the title and Chris Shearburn got his first win in a while. He'll look to go back-to-back down in South Florida. Pre-race starts at 8:45 p.m. Eastern. Race broadcast at 9 on iRacing's Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube channels. Then Wednesday night here on Podium, it's the Dirt Sprint Car Championship Series spring season from USA International Speedway in Lakeland, Florida. You'll be able to catch the action on twitch.tv/Podium2 and then the Podium Facebook and YouTube pages. 9 p.m. start time for that on Wednesday night. Then next Sunday, plate racing with the MPI Cup Series on the Podium eSports Twitch channel this Sunday at 9:15 p.m. Eastern from Talladega, before we're back in action with Monday Night Racing presented by Tufco Flooring at Rockingham to conclude the round of 10 in the playoffs next Monday night, 8 p.m. Eastern on twitch.tv/Podium2, as well as Podium's Facebook and YouTube. The MSRA Premier Series also in action a few weeks from now, Saturday, March 13th, 8 p.m. Eastern at Phoenix Raceway. That you can see on Podium's YouTube and Facebook pages as well. 6 laps to go when we go back to green flag racing in this big green egg 120, and we have tire strategy across the board, including Max Kinnon and Kyle Busch. You've got the KBM mechanic and the KB in KBM in control of this entirely. They are going to have the inside and the outside, so anybody who wants to make a move to the burst, they're going to have to go upstairs, I think, and make it 3 wide. This could get very fun going into turn 1.
Well, I got to say, for everyone who is watching tonight's race, if you have not paid attention, pay attention to this restart. This could be chaotic, it could be entertaining, and we could possibly even see a surprise winner take home the checker flag if we do not see a caution in the next 6 laps. But I have a feeling, James and Blake, we're going to see at least 1, if not maybe 2 more cautions just by how this field is looking right now.
I have a weird hunch. You're probably right. I just don't know where the yellows are going to be. So that's what we get to watch for here in the booth while you all are watching at home, and we'll see who spots the incident first. I have a hard time believing this is going green the rest of the way, but it's who and it's where, and then who gets swept up in it. That's the biggest question. But it is Max Kinnon who will lead us back to green. 5 laps to go when they hit the stripe of the big green egg, 120. In Season 2 of Monday Night Racing, presented by Tufco Flooring, off and away, Kinnon goes. Kyle Busch just about smacked the fence. That'll open it up for Alfredo to go to the inside of the 51, and I think get around Kyle Busch with ease, and we'll see whether or not the 2 tires end up making all the difference as Raja Caruth tried to cut down in front of James Davison and got turned. Shane Van Gisbergen goes sideways as well, and that actually, at the end of it all, Blake McCandless was nowhere near as big as I thought it might be, but I think that's also because that happened so quickly after the restart.
It's not often you see a car go dead sideways contact exiting turn 2 and the whole field does not pile in after a restart, but luckily Caruth kind of used the outside wall to save him. But you see right here, Caruth, looks like James Davison was down there. Caruth, obviously, on those 2 fresh tires, he's been so strong all night. He's been trying to get back down to the bottom after Kyle Busch smacked the outside wall off the restart. He's trying to get in line behind Rogers and Alfredo, and he's just not able to get down there. Davison on the bottom of the racetrack, you see on board here. And yeah, I think that's the case, as Davison just had a nose of his Camaro beneath Raja Caruth as you try to get down to the bottom there.
I think at this stage of the race, you can't blame Raja for trying to get down there, but there's also no guarantee that that actually ends up working either, Taylor Burris, and I think that's exactly what we saw with the 6 car in that situation.
Certainly is the case, and in fact, if you think about it, for some of these drivers, it's, you know, a winner-take-all, trying to see if they can get to the front, especially for those drivers like Davison, who had 4 fresh tires. He felt like he could possibly take the fight to Anthony Alfredo and possibly win here. Of course, he's another one of those drivers this season who's had multiple wins in Monday Night Racing, but of course, not in the playoffs because he didn't complete the 6 minimum required races in earlier this season. So a tough break for him with that incident.
I think that also likely eliminates Raja Caruth from race victory contention as well. He was there to some degree in this race and had points where he looked quick, but I think that pretty much ensures it won't be the 6 machine going to victory lane at Dover tonight. However, Max Kinnon is still in the mix. The problem, though, is that when we got the yellow flag, Anthony Alfredo had managed to get ahead of Kyle Busch. So Alfredo is going to be up top, you would figure, for this restart, which may well be a green-white checker as well. But if Alfredo's there, if he can get going, even on the 2 tires, you compare, the 2, you would think right sides, 5 laps old versus the 30-lap-old tires that Max Kinnon has. Blake McCandless, not to say that it's entirely written out for us, but there's strong probability and correlation between the tire differences and the differences in age and wear and what we should expect to happen on this restart.
Well, there's no doubt about it. Anthony Alfredo, he's had the fastest race car all night. He's going to have the fastest race car on this restart. Those 4 fresh tires are going to be so key for him. But Max Kinnon has control of this restart, and that is a huge advantage to have. I don't think people understand. Pace car jumps really early off and onto pit road here, so this is one of those tracks where, as the leader, the restart zone here is about as wide as it is at any of the tracks we go to here in Monday Night Racing. So if Kinnon can execute this restart and get a jump on Alfredo, he's going to be on his heels, but I think Max Kinnon could hold them off. Of course, you see Kyle Busch right there. He's damaged. He has old tires. He's just trying to play the card of, I was running back in 25th and somehow maybe try to get a top 10 out of this.
a good points night. It might not necessarily be a victory for Kyle Busch, but I don't think that's the idea. The idea is making sure that you keep yourself in contention for the Monday Night Racing crown, which any of these drivers up here, and you look at all the folks in the mix, they're all playoff contenders. Kennan, Alfredo, Busch, Rogers. Davison is the first one who is not in the hunt for the title. And DJ Cummings and Nick DeGroot also in there with Matt Stolnick. So Gabe Wood even too. I think that means Ron Capps may well be the only driver outside of the top 11 or so that is not in the fight for at least the top 10 of the race win. But maybe not a surprise then. You look at the drivers who have consistently been the best at Monday Night Racing over the course of the season. Blake McCandless, and look where they are up in the top 10 as we close this race out.
That's exactly why they're in this championship fight. But again, anything can happen on these green white checkers. We've seen some wild and crazy finishes here, so we won't hand out these points before we see the checkered flag, because we have seen a lot of crazy things happen this entire season and throughout the history of Monday Night Racing. So 2 laps away from it, a lot left to be decided.
This is going to be our first green white checker finish as well, or rather attempt. Might not necessarily be the finish. We'll see if we get the white before we get the next yellow. But our first green white checker attempt of the evening. 3 available to this field if we end up using all of them. And we will see whether or not we have similar points to what you just saw on the side of your screen, or whether or not it gets shuffled up via some very late incident. But it's Max Kennan who goes and takes off. Got a good gap on Kyle Busch, but it's going to be all about how you can block Anthony Alfredo in that 38 machine, who immediately ducks to the bottom, tries to get to the inside.
Going to be tight racing here. Let's see if they keep it clean off turn number 2. So far, yes, for your front 8 drivers right now as you ride on board with Max Kennan, your race leader, with a hard-charging Anthony Alfredo right behind him.
Yellow flag out once again. I think more trouble in the back of the field. A big wreck over in turn 3. Lots of cars piling in. Brett Baldeck is there. Jason Keffer, Michael Massey, Mark Ravillas in trouble. Justin Malillo. A huge wreck over in turn number 3. And I think this starts with Massey and Keffer.
Yeah, that's exactly where it starts. Maxey and Keffer, you can see here, off the exit of turn 2, 30. Yeah, that's a typical Dover wreck right there. We saw it happen earlier between TJ Majors and David Schildhouse, where Keffer thinks he's clear or just comes up the racetrack a little too much, squeezes the other driver into the outside wall. And again, Dover, not a lot of room to go as they try to collect it up. The rest of the field going so fast. They're trying to get everything they can on this late restart. They just pile in. Nick DeGroot, championship leader, he's involved in this one, so this could have, as we said earlier, lots of implications here. Actually, DeGroot's able to get by as his teammate in the 15 there that gets wrapped up in that. But this is why we don't hand out the points until the race is over, James. A lot can happen. And you see, even here into turn 1, look at Dylan Welch. Man, he managed to save that race car. That was a heck of a job there on the apron.
That would be Dylan using some of his midget experience, I think, to keep that thing in one piece. We know Dylan, of course, a native Hoosier, and they know a little bit about dirt track racing in Indiana. So some of those skills come in handy, even if it is concrete instead of dirt. And he's at least kept the 14 pointed in the right direction, albeit just no luck for that car tonight at all. And I think he will be very much looking forward to getting to Rockingham in the Street Stocks next week and leaving this race behind. But again, it will be Kennan v. Alfredo at the front of this Taylor Burris. And if you are Max Kennan, the extra restart cycle, I think, certainly doesn't help your case. And maybe at this point, too, we might also need to consider Will Rogers in this too, and Ryan Vargas, because those two are the first 2 on fresh tires. So you've got an interesting mix of things. Kennan on 30-lap old tires, Alfredo on 30-lap old lefts, 8-lap old rights, and then Rogers, Vargas, and company on fresh tires, 8 laps old. Kyle Busch, of course, stayed out. He got 24-lap old tires, and then everybody else came down for 4 tires and fuel a few laps ago. So a few strategies in the mix here, and a few different ways this could shake out as a result.
It certainly is. I mean, we have pretty much a mixed bag of who could win this. We have no tires, 2 tires, 4 tires, drivers who have been strong since the drop of the green flag, and a couple of incoming drivers such as Max Kennan, who's leading this race right now. But It's a matter of how well you can time this restart. For drivers such as Max Kinnon, it's probably best to maybe try and see if he can hold back the hard charging of Anthony Alfredo and Will Rogers and Ryan Vargas. For Vargas and Rogers and Anthony Alfredo, they have to be ready to capitalize and attack once they get past that start-finish line and take the green flag.
And make sure that you keep Rogers and Vargas at bay if you are Alfredo. I wonder, Kenan, and Blake, I want to come to you on this because I feel like you've had enough experience racing these things, you'll be able to give a good answer. If you're Kenan, what's the ideal way to restart here? Do you wait and maybe try and give it a hairline bit of gas and then go just to try and force Alfredo to go and then check up? Or do you wait deep in the box to go or go early? What do you think's the best strategy if you're the 21 car in this situation?
If I'm the 21 car, I think I'm going to do what I remember William Byron doing in eNASCAR Pro Invitational back when they were running at Dover. I'm going to go as soon as I see that pace car up there, that red, white, and blue pace car, as soon as that driver starts to think about turning down into pit road, I'm immediately going to hit the gas, hoping that Alfredo maybe spins his tires. Because the longer you wait, the more banking that Alfredo has to try and get down. He can use that banking on the high side to his advantage a little bit. And again, you just have to hope that you catch him sleeping. With those old tires, you're not going to beat him on speed. You just have to try and use the element of surprise in that. And look on this restart, that last one, Alfredo, he got a run into turn 1, and instead of going around the outside in 1 and 2, he decided to get back in line and try to beat Kenan on the bottom. If I'm Alfredo, you are fast enough on those 4 tires, you can just roll it on top, use that momentum to make that pass down the back straightaway. So Kenan, I'd go early, and Alfredo, don't go to the bottom in 1 and 2, get to the high side and get in the lane that the 21's not in.
Even if it's just the 2 tires instead of the 4, I think you might have a point there. Rogers and Vargas, on the other hand, do have the opportunity, I think, to get to the bottom quickly. And it, I think, is also worth noting that Alfredo had a sizable run in 3 and 4 that last time by before the yellow flag came out. If we had gone green through those corners, I think we would have been all right. But we're back to green flag racing here, and Kenan takes off. He goes, and it is Rogers to the inside of Anthony Alfredo, and he makes contact with the 38. There goes Alfredo sideways and up and around, and big Mets on the back straightaway, which is going to force our third and final green-white checker as Anthony Alfredo and Will Rogers get together, and it's the 38 who ends up on the losing end of that equation, and about 10 other cars got caught up in that mess with the big green egg Ford Mustang.
We saw the aggression here on this restart once again, and it affects some major hitters here. You see Will Rogers will make that contact with Anthony Alfredo. Nowhere to go for Ryan Vargas as the rest of the field gets log jam on the back straightaway here at Dover, as some drivers had nowhere to go, and unfortunately their day will be done here.
Nick DeGroot, the defending champion, involved in that incident, and you want to talk about how this could shake up the point standings going into Rockingham. DeGroot, who's been a top 10 car for a good chunk of this race, all of a sudden may well be in trouble on that front. Contact with, looks like it was James Davison that got into the factory back Chevy Camaro, but big incident there. And of the drivers fighting for the Season 2 title, that wreck hurt DeGroot more than anybody else by a significant margin.
It certainly did. We'll get one more look at it here. Again, just nowhere to go. You see Alfredo gets tagged there. Vargas is involved. Everybody's scattering around, just looking for a way through. Vargas, all things considered, actually did a pretty nice job getting through that wreck. Still had a little bit of contact, but that's about the best that he could muster. Everybody is virtually destroyed here. But I got to say, in terms of the championship, I got to give a tip of my cap to Kyle Busch right here. Kyle in third, has a pretty much destroyed race car, is on way older tires than everybody else. He's just looking to limp this thing home. And again, he was running back in 25th when we had that long green flag run, wasn't even able to keep up speed. If he can get just a top 10 out of this is quite a recovery drive for Kyle Busch, who should have really no business with the state his Rowdy Energy Toyota is in to be up here at the front of the field.
That's experience, that's skill, but I think more importantly, understanding the situation so far as the points are concerned. Even if your car is torn up, even if you don't get a win, these 2 race rounds are so short that any sort of bad finish is going to put you in a huge hole going into Rockingham next week. And even if you might not be able to get the victory, getting good points to give yourself a chance to make it happen next week, especially if this race hasn't panned out the way you want it to, more crucial than I think we can put into words. As you take a look at the live points there, Anthony Alfredo was given 4th place after that yellow flag, just based off of where the caution flew. So he actually didn't lose all that much track position, and as a result is your live points leader, at least as of now. Will Rogers, though, could change that if he gets around Max Kennan, who also stands to benefit greatly here. Kennan, of course, on the outside looking in, coming into tonight. As we started this round, he was one of 4 drivers who started with no bonus points, but certainly would love to change that with his first victory of the year, and I think spend a week for the first time in a few where he wouldn't have to worry about being outside of the cutoff line. He spent a good chunk of the cutoff race at Talladega and the IndyCars last week on the outside looking in. He spent tonight on the outside looking in for most of this race. I think he'd be quite happy to not have to worry about that as much going to Rockingham next week. Will Rogers, too. The flying Hawaiian out of Maui for Space Station Gaming. He's been very, very quick throughout a good chunk of the season. Got the victory in the Pro 2 trunks at Watkins Glen to kick off 2021. Certainly would not mind putting the Space Station Gaming colors in victory lane. As you take a look at the points here, 1 lap to go before we get our final green flag of the evening. Next flag will end the race no matter what, whether or not it's a yellow or a white. We'll see whether or not the field can keep it together. But Will Rogers going to try and make a statement for Space Station. Anthony Alfredo, maybe for Big Green Egg, Kyle Busch and Rowdy Energy, Ryan Vargas and TikTok, DJ Cummings and NASCAR. Possibilities are just about endless here, Taylor.
Certainly is, and a lot is at stake here. I mean, I'm still interested to see if Max Kennan can pull something out of his hat with a win here and possibly have a good finish. Same thing with Kyle Busch. He needs, with that tore-up race car, he could possibly get a podium finish to kind of give him that buffer he needs before we head to Rockingham, which, if you think about it, Rockingham is just as difficult as Dover is. I mean, that track can go out and bite you, especially off turn 2 and through the middle of 3 and 4. So it's going to be exciting, and a lot's going to be at stake here.
Is this the restart where Max Kennan decides to go early? Has he saved his best one for the final restart of this race? Pace car is off and he is waiting. Looks like he's going to wait deep in the box and try and go on the opposite end of the spectrum that Blake talked about. There they go. Off and away they roll past the start-finish line for the final restart of this Big Green Egg 120. They'll go down into 1 and 2, and we'll see what kind of run Will Rogers gets.
What can Will Rogers do? We see the fresh tires going to come into play. Is Max Kennan going to go down to the bottom? He is. A block into 3 and 4 for the final time. Kennan on the bottom, Rogers on the top. Here comes Will Rogers looking for the race lead.
Will Rogers might well be able to make this work up high as they take the white flag. Will race all the way back, but Rogers with a nose ahead into 1.
Just barely, as Kennan on the inside advantage still watches on as here comes contact right there down the back straightaway. Major incidents as cars through. Ryan Vargas survives it.
Ryan Vargas just drove through all of that madness that happened on the back straightaway, and Vargas is going to snatch this one from about 5th on the final restart. It's Ryan Vargas who goes to victory lane in the Big Green Egg 120 after an absolute fracas over in turn 3. Took out about 4 or 5 of the top 5 cars, and Vargas with the evasive maneuvers of the night to go to victory lane at Dover International Speedway and pick up his first victory in season 2 of Monday Night Racing.
Wow, what a race, and very exciting. I mean, so full of exciting, and of course Ryan Vargas getting his first Monday Night Racing finish here was exciting.
Ryan Vargas hadn't won since, I believe, the Radicals at Texas towards the back end of season 1 in September, and just managed to somehow get through all of this. Here's your copter shot. You can see how the seas parted for the 6 machine in ways that they didn't for a Max Kennan or a Kyle Busch. He just snuck on through the hole that was there and managed to find a way through it all as everything broke into craziness behind him.
Hey, that's all it really took. Obviously, if you're Vargas, you're out here just racing for wins. We see here on the final restart, you see the fresh tires there over Kyle Busch. But I was even wondering if Rowdy had a chance at this. You see the smoke, and there's a hole, and Vargas is able to shoot the gap. Kyle Busch into the back of Will Rogers. Alfredo, he is able to make it through, but not before Kyle Busch turns right in front of him. And my goodness, Vargas, again, not a whole lot of space to go here at Dover, but Vargas shoots the middle perfectly and is able to hold on and bring her home.
Big win for Vargas, which definitely shakes up the playoffs as well. I think, Blake, you were the one who said these points are definitely not official at the end. And as we take a look at the full field rundown, you'll see just how much things changed even within that final restart. We had plenty of shuffling in the final order, but the biggest point of all, Ryan Vargas goes to victory lane in the Big Green Egg 120 at Dover International Speedway. Will Rogers was able to hang on to P2. Gabe Wood benefited from the carnage in turn 3. He jumped up to 3rd. James Davison got 4th. Ford Martin with a top 5 finish. Mark Rabillas, who had been buried about 20th for a solid 80% of this race, comes home with a top 10. Nick DeGroot rebounds to get 7th. Michael Massey was 8th. Steve Affont finished 9th. Greg Stumpf completed the top 10 for off-axis paint tailor-burrs. And you look at this next page, this is where you see the points shake up as a result of that last lap crash.
You certainly do. Kyle Busch coming home in 11th, followed by Brett Baldeck. How about that finish? Brett Baldeck quietly survives the night with a couple of incidents, coming home in 12th. So a big round of applause for Brett Baldeck. 13th goes to Garrett Smithley. 14th, Preston Pardus. Max Cannon, who was leading at the drop of the green flag, will come home in 15th. Matthew Stallneck comes home in 16th. DJ Cummings, 17th. Devin Henry, 18th. Kobe Moore, 19th. And one of our top championship contenders, Anthony Alfredo, 20th.
Anthony Alfredo.
All the way back to 20th, Blake McCandless, after being in the top 5 of that final restart. That's a huge swing.
That's a huge hit there for Alfredo. 21st goes to Garrett Miller. And mind you, the rest of these drivers you can see scored at least a lap down. So not many drivers on the lead lap at the end of this thing. 22nd goes to Jason Keffer. 23rd was Shane Van Gisbergen. Yeah, there we go. There, tongue twister. It's been a rough night. 24th to Dylan Welch. 25th was Justin Malillo. Raja Karuth, he was oh so competitive throughout the night. He finishes back in 26th, 16 laps down. Robbie Lyons in 27th. David Schildhouse brings it home in 28th. Ruben Garcia in 29th. And another heavy hitter tonight, Nick Sanchez. He finished up in 30th.
Sanchez 30th. 31st was TJ Majors. Chad Reed finished in 32nd. Brandon Brown just continues a string of bad luck in Monday night racing events. Seems like he's always caught up in someone else's mess, and tonight no different. He'll finish 33rd. Rob D'Amico from Big Green Egg, 34th. Drew Welker and Ron Capps completing your 36-car field. We'll see if we can take a look at the point standings, and that's what we have coming out of Dover. And Anthony Alfredo, remember, he was about 15, I think 18 points to the good on one of those final restarts. Now dead even with the cut. Same for Max Kennan, who was in the top 5 as well. He's again on the outside looking in. The 10 car of DJ Cummings is way out there. Ron Capps has got lots of work to do, but that's going to be heavy breathing for Matt Stallneck, who's in that mix. The 90 machine of Preston Pardus didn't have a great night. The 51 machine, I think, if anything, you're very happy that you've managed to sort of sneak your way up through that if you are in that mix. 89 machine of Nick DeGroot ends up fine after we thought he was in trouble. And Gabe Wood, who was, maybe top 10, 15 all night, didn't necessarily have speed, but he ends up arguably one of the biggest winners of that incident. Goes from being within 10 points of the cutoff line to 12 to the good as we head to Rockingham next week. Let's take a moment to talk to our winners and bring in a driver who's not had a chance to give one of these interviews in some time. Last time we talked to Ryan Vargas in this capacity was back in September when he went back-to-back with the Radicals at Texas and the Trucks at Darlington. And finally, took you a while, Ryan, to get the victory in Season 2, but you get it in one of the wildest finishes I think we've seen in this season of racing. So that last lap, just take us through what you saw out of your windshield and how you managed to split the middle and evade all the cars crashing around you.
I'll just say this, it is about time. We have had way too many races get taken out from under us in this series. I could name just about 5 or 6 of them this year where where I was just up front and we'd get wrecked. So feels good to have a little bit of luck. But really, that's what it was on the last lap, was luck. I saw them wreck high, I saw them spin low. I just kind of saw a gap in the middle and I didn't lift. I mean, if I wrecked, I wrecked. But if I would have lifted, I would have been caught up. I saw Kyle come back down the track, so just a lot of luck there. I think it was going to be a race between me and Alfredo, I really think, at the end there. I know Will got up there after he got into Alfredo, but at the end there, it was between me and him, and I think Alfredo was probably going to be a little bit better, but you got to be lucky sometimes.
Sometimes better to be lucky than good. Sometimes carrying with the theme tonight, we talked a lot about Ayrton Senna's quote, if you no longer go for a gap that exists, then you are no longer a racing driver. I feel like that typifies that move on the back straightaway perfectly. But you're right. I think within the context of this season, how satisfying is this, given that you've had a few that have been right there for the taking and other people have gotten in your way? It might not necessarily have been your strongest race. You might not have necessarily been the fastest car, but this win, I think, goes a long way towards making up for some of the other ones earlier in the season that didn't go your way.
Yeah, I mean, that's really kind of how it was. I think I could have made the playoffs this year. We just had so much bad luck and, even not just bad luck on the track, but bad luck with the computer. I mean, I had a glitch in Twin Ring, a bunch of other stuff. So I mean, it's this year has been a year of just things that are out of my own control. But that's kind of how it goes sometimes on iRacing. There's not a lot of things you can control. So many variables, and that's how it is in real racing too. But I like you said, I think we were probably a top 2, top 3 car all day. This win wasn't a fluke. We definitely got lucky on that final lap, but like I said, it was going to be between me and Alfredo there. I feel like Alfredo was a little bit better, but regardless, just feels good to finally get a win this year.
And a great way to cap off another big week in which the reach of NASCAR certainly expanded a good bit with the deal between you, Alvin Kamara, and the big squeezy out of New Orleans. To see that plastered everywhere, to get the press that you did, and then come away with a Monday Night Racing win. Almost another one of those weeks that you just don't want to end, right?
Yeah. Hopefully this luck translates to Homestead. I know we're bringing a good car there. We had some really bad luck on Saturday, so hopefully this Monday Night Racing luck carries over, which is the first time I've been able to say that all year. Hopefully the Monday Night Racing luck carries over. But just shout out to all the buddies that were in the Discord. I had Will, Raj, and Preston in there. It's always fun racing this Tuk-Tuk car in Monday Night Racing. And as you mentioned, Alvin Kamara, shout out to him. And the big squeezy this past weekend, shout out to Swan Security. All of our partners at JD Motorsports. It's always fun to do this, and it's cool to put JD Motorsports in the middle of all the eSports stuff.
Always a fun time, I think, when the pride of La Mirada, California is around. Ryan Vargas, winner tonight at the Big Green 120. Thanks for the time, Ryan, and congratulations on victory number 1 in season number 2.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys for broadcasting this.
We turn from the driver of the number 6 to the driver of the number 55. Ryan Vargas' teammate Will Rogers for Space Station Gaming with a good run in the playoffs, and Taylor Burrish will chat with our runner-up.
Here with Will Rogers coming home in P2 tonight for Dover International Speedway. Will, you were probably one of the most strongest competitors that could take the fight to Anthony Alfredo, but were surprisingly able to negotiate through that last lap wreck coming off of turn 2. How did you manage to get through it, and how did you think your race went overall?
Yeah, man, honestly, I have no idea how I made it through that. I'm looking at the replay right now from various angles, and I wrecked 3 times before the car got straight again, and I was able to get back in the throttle. In fact, I wrecked 3 times. Kyle Busch came in and drilled me from behind and then shot me forward, and I think that's what gave me the turbo boost I needed to get going again, and came home P2. So big congrats to Ryan. Obviously, great finish for Space Station Racing. He's one of our influencers on the team, and really happy that he could get the win. A little bit too late. Of course, he's not in the playoffs anymore, but better late than never. Yeah, I feel like we had a pretty decent pace. Definitely didn't have the pace to beat Alfredo. He was just able to save his tires just enough, and then stay ultra consistent. That's something I struggle with at this racetrack. So, but happy with running P2, and the night actually turned out way better than I thought it would.
A good points night for you before we head to next week's race at Rockingham with the street stocks. How confident do you feel about trying to make it to the next round, given the performance that you had tonight and looking ahead?
Oh boy, I have no idea. But what I will say is that between Ryan and myself, and maybe a few other people on the service, or at least in this league, we have a ton of experience running street stocks on bigger ovals. So I'll probably use that, hopefully to my advantage, at least that experience. But who knows? It's Monday Night Racing, man. We're all out here for blood, and stuff gets crazy, obviously, as it did this last lap.
Certainly is. Well, before we let you go, Will, anyone you'd like to say thanks to?
Yeah, Space Station Racing, all of our partners, and Space Station Gaming, of course, and my Coke team. They're going to be racing tomorrow night, obviously at Homestead. Be rooting for the number 55 and number 11. Hopefully we get ourselves a W out there, and our Road to Pro team starting up pretty soon. So got to thank those guys for being part of the effort, and I can't wait to see how the rest of the year turns out for Space Station.
All right, we look forward to seeing what happens for your team tomorrow and what you can do next week. That is Will Rogers coming home in second in the Space Station Racing number 55 Ford Mustang.
Space Station Racing, of course, the iRacing arm of Space Station Gaming, one of the premier esports organizations in the United States. And Rogers with a lot to cheer on. Malik Ray and Vicente Saldas tomorrow night in the Coke Series. And then not too long before the Road to Pro begins for 2021 with the first race of the eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying series from Las Vegas Motor Speedway Thursday night, March 4th. More information on that upcoming, but we turn our attention now to the driver of the number 50 machine. How about Gabe Wood from Valdosta, Georgia, who sat in the middle of the field and then got the finish when he needed it the most? Blake McCandless, how wild was that to watch?
It certainly was, Gabe. Take me back. It's lap 75. You can see it on the screen right there. The entire front clip is completely gone on your race car. You're running 22nd. How in the world are we talking to you right now with the third place finish?
All right, so you're going to have to back that up to about lap 20 when that happened. When Ruben Garcia got caught up, I was right behind them and got involved in that. Was able to take my reset was done for the rest of the night. And then when James Davidson got turned like lap 40 to 50, that was two and a half minutes worth of damage. So I had to take that. Car drove awful. Like, that was the most ill-handling piece of junk I have ever had to wheel. Got in another wreck, had to come down for like 30 seconds more. And then lap 75, there was that wreck on the front stretch, and I ended up getting ran into by somebody who couldn't check up in time. Funny enough, the car handled better after that. It was incredible. The car actually turned. And so the guys kept wrecking, and my spotter, Case Kallenbach, he's my crew chief actually on the NASCAR Xfinity side, so it's kind of cool to have him up in the spotter stand for me, and he helps call the race for me. It's kind of cool. For me and him to work together like that, like we do all week. But he just starts calling. He goes, look, if they start wrecking, just stick to the high side. Put the right side on the wall and gas it. Just go right through. And 3 separate wrecks happened on the backstretch where that happened. And I ended up restarting like 8th. And James Davidson got a bad restart, and I was able to get 7th. And I was like, oh, cool, a top 10 with this piece of crap. I will take it. And then everything broke loose in front of me.
Oh, it certainly did, and obviously you emerged from the smoke and the chaos, but this has to be huge when we talk about drivers trying to salvage everything they can, get all the points that are possible. I think there's no better example than you right here. Obviously, you come into tonight, you're tied on that cut line. You got one more round to go. We have street stocks at Rockingham, but you give yourself a very large cushion with all the issues that it seemed like a lot of our playoff drivers were having.
Yeah, it was going to be a struggle at Rockingham if I was going to end up. I was half expecting to end up finishing like 19th if we went green there at the end, and I'm sitting there thinking, I was like, that's going to put me in a pretty much top 5 or bust situation going into Rockingham. And these guys just kept wrecking, and all of a sudden I'm sitting in the top 10. man, it should be a pretty good points day. And like I said, everybody wrecked toward the bottom, and Kyle Busch got hooked at the very end of that wreck, and it took out a couple guys, and all of a sudden I'm sitting third.
That was crazy stuff there, Gabe. Well, we'll let you go, Gabe, but amazing job. I know it's really satisfying in these races when you feel like everything is working against you, and all of a sudden sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. Everything works out in your favor, so I'm sure you're thrilled with the third place finish. We'll let you go, and a great job tonight making the most out of a really tough night.
I appreciate it, guys. Can I mention a couple people real quick?
Absolutely.
Couple of people helping me out there. Eric Beaudoin, he's a professional spotter and was running the Hire Eric campaign, trying to get him a job in motorsports again. And fortunately, JD Motors, we actually hired him. So now I'm on the Fire Eric campaign, so we're trying to get rid of him. And I got to thank KSDT CPA. They're not on our car tonight, but they're going to be on our actual Xfinity car for Homestead and Las Vegas in the next coming weeks. They're an accounting firm out of Miami. They're one of their owners and one of their investors, Jeff. He is the best sponsor I have ever seen. This dude, he is working on the cars constantly. He's so involved, and it's amazing. I got to thank those guys. I got to thank Forever Lawn. They hopped on board in our Xfinity program for, I think, 18 races this year. We got a little bad luck here at the start of the year, but hopefully us and the Zero team can get it turned around on the real life side of things, and hopefully I can make a run for the championship on the computer side.
Hopefully so. Well, Gabe, we'll let you go. He was very excited, and obviously we move forward to you, James Pike, but again, really nice to hear from Gabe there after such an amazing finish.
Managing to take advantage of the situation and really put himself in a good spot for next week when we get to Rockingham. A driver who unfortunately isn't going to have as much breathing room. Matt Stolnick, to our BSC In-Race Reporter, finishes 16th. And Matt, I think, are you happy to see the back of Dover, or do you fear the street stocks at Rockingham more?
No, I did some testing earlier this week at Rockingham for next week's race, and I still feel really confident that we're going to be able to go into that race and be really aggressive and get a good finish. And the good news is that the points situation, I think, could have been a lot worse coming out of this one. So I mean, look, what else can you say really about a night like tonight? I mean, just 4 separate occasions of getting caught in somebody else's mess. It's affectionately known as the self-cleaning racetrack. So we were on the receiving end of that one a lot tonight, and kind of figure that be the case. And you just got to look at the things you can control, right? I mean, we didn't get a good qualifying run. I messed up the lap, and then we were kind of fighting an uphill battle all race long. Had good speed, which I was really happy with. But you can't really do much with that if you don't get those green flag runs. So, I was happy that I was able to get into a situation late in the race before that last wreck where I was back into the top 10. So, I mean, look, it's going to be a similar-ish race next week at Rockingham, maybe not quite as crazy. There's going to be attrition. There's going to be ups and downs, and it's going to be about not giving up and just doing whatever you can to just be there at the end. So we'll circle back next week. I know DJ's my teammate had a tough finish tonight in very similar circumstances. So we're going to go back to the drawing board and see if we can put 2 cars in next week.
With you being pretty much on the bubble with no margin coming into next week, do you even worry about points at that point? Is it just almost a non-consideration because you just basically have to race the best you can and get in, and there's not really anything to lean on to save yourself if you have a bad finish? Is it worth even worrying about it in your mind?
No, I don't think you can. I think, you look at playoff formats here in NASCAR and other forms of racing that have them. Obviously, ours is pretty similar to NASCAR. You can't be going into a race, trying not to lose. You have to be going into a race with the intention of trying to be aggressive and get points wherever you can. I've always felt that I think calculated aggression is rewarded on this game and in this league. I mean, just with how crazy things get at the end of these races, you have to be aggressive and you have to be able to step out there and be willing to put your car in uncomfortable circumstances. So that won't change. I'm going to go out there next week and do everything I possibly can to win the race, knowing that the points will be what they will be. The good news is we do have the tiebreaker right now. I'm in if the points were to end or if the cutoff was after today. So it could have been a lot worse. That last wreck prior to the end of the race, I think I was about 10 points out, and we ended the night tied for the last spot and owning the tiebreaker. So strategy doesn't change going into next week. You gotta approach every single one of these races looking to win. And if it comes down to the end of the race and we know it's close, I'll make sure that I don't do anything to put myself in a bad spot. But if somebody like a DJ or a Max goes out there and wins next week, that's going to put guys like me and Alfredo in a tough spot points wise. So you got to be aggressive, and that's what we're going to do.
We'll see how it all pans out next week. But Matt, thanks for taking the time all night as our BFC in-race reporter, and we look forward to watching your playoff charge continue at Rockingham next Monday night.
Appreciate it, guys, and appreciate the opportunity. It was fun doing the in-race reporting, and love to do it again.
Matt Stolnick and the 41 machine going to be fighting for a spot in the round of 7 next week when we go racing with the street stocks at Rockingham. But that's not the only thing you will see in the world of iRacing coming up over the next few days. Tomorrow night, the big show. It's the second round of the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series from Homestead Miami Speedway. Pre-race begins at 8:40 p.m. Eastern Time. Race coverage begins at 9. You'll see it all on iRacing's Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. Then flip over to Podium's YouTube, Facebook, and twitch.tv/Podium2 the following night, because Wednesday night we go racing with the Dirt Sprint Car Championship Series from USA International Speedway. Next Sunday, to round out February, the MPI Cup Series goes restrictor plate racing once again. Round 8 of their season from Talladega Super Speedway. You'll see all the action at 9:15 p.m. Eastern Time on twitch.tv/Podium eSports before we return to action with Monday night racing from Rockingham Speedway. The street stocks to determine which 3 drivers exit the playoff picture and which 7 advance into the round of 7 as we march our way towards the season finale in the trucks at Atlanta Motor Speedway next month. You'll see that race March 1st, next Monday night, 8 p.m. Eastern on twitch.tv/Podium2 and Podium's YouTube and Facebook pages. Then, the MSRA Premier Series in action from Phoenix Raceway, March 13th, Saturday. That'll be 8 p.m. Eastern on Podium's secondary Twitch channel and then the Facebook and YouTube channels as well. As we close this broadcast out, I think that I look at all this, Blake McCandless, and I see just a perfect setup for Stolnick there. And I think he hit on it so well, and that you really can't worry about points if you're that close to the line. You just sort of have to go for it and hope that the results fall in your favor. And the question, I think, going into next week is who, especially amongst the drivers who are up there in the point standings, is going to worry about points, and who is going to just absolutely go for it and not race scared, like Matt said. I think that genuinely could be the difference between somebody going home next week and somebody making it into the round of 7.
Well, I think there's different ways you have to manage it. We've seen so many crazy ends of races here in Monday Night Racing. We've seen long green flag runs. We've seen a mix of kind of what we saw tonight, some late yellows, and then a lot of late yellows, followed by a big wreck that ended up really shuffling up the order. So I think it just depends on where you are in the standings. Obviously, if you're one of those drivers that has a pretty significant advantage going into next week, you don't really have a whole lot to lose by being a little conservative. And Will Rogers, Gabe Wood, they gave themselves the opportunity to do that should they so choose. And of course, you have to remember the combination we have. Street stocks at Rockingham is going to be wild because everybody's going to be so close. It's almost going to look like pack racing. So you could really think of this, I don't want to say super speedway racing, but I think that's about the closest comparison that we can get, that you really need to assess the situation that you're in. And if you have a little bit of wiggle room, again, all you have to do if it ends up like tonight, it's just finished on the lead lap, you'll be in a good spot. So I just really think it depends on where you are. And then obviously you have a handful of drivers. They want to win anyway, so they're going to do that regardless of anything that's happening in the points.
Taylor Burris, I feel like that sets up perfectly to talk a little bit about Rockingham because to Blake's point about street stock racing and a track like that being close to super speedway racing, for anybody who got the chance to watch the E-Street Stock Showdown back in January from Auto Club, I think that'll be the most direct comparison to what we see at Rockingham next week. And the man who organized the event happened to be none other than tonight's race winner, Ryan Vargas. So you figure he's going to be good. By extension, Will Rogers, who's part of that group and is obviously very close, very good friends with Brian, you figure he should be in the mix. And I suspect a few others as well who have run that sort of combo. If you run the street stocks just for fun, you're going to be in really good shape when we get to Rockingham next week, even if Rockingham is as difficult as it usually tends to be.
It certainly is, but it's going to be very exciting to watch these drivers battle it out at the Rock. I mean, that track is, I kind of consider it a little bit similar to Dover as far as how this track kind of gets out and bites you in certain parts. We saw that happening and when drivers are coming off of turn 2 here at Dover. Rockingham's the same way in a sense if you don't hit your marks right. Same thing in the middle of turns 3 and 4. You can lose a little bit of control of your car in that corner and it can easily send you to the outside barrier before sending you right back down, clear across the racetrack, collecting any other drivers that are unfortunately in your way. So we could see a little bit different. Of course, these street stocks are a little bit more tougher compared to the NASCAR Cup cars that we just saw here tonight. So maybe a little bit more forgiving as far as with damage, but still it's going to be exciting. And of course, with Ryan Vargas winning here tonight and having the experience that he has in these street stocks, he could possibly spoil this entire round in the playoffs.
I don't think we can rule out that possibility at all. And we're just going to have to wait until next Monday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, twitch.tv/Podium2, Podium's Facebook, Podium's YouTube, wherever you want to watch this race, you can tune in to the final race of the round of 10 in season 2 of Monday Night Racing. That will do it for our coverage of the Big Green Egg 120. In season 2 of Monday Night Racing, presented by Tufco Flooring. For everybody at Monday Night Racing, Ford Martin, Paul Sutton, Race Control, Josh Mendoza. For our team at Podium eSports, Cisco Scaramuza, Gary Sexton, John Theodore, tonight's producer Ryan Bauer, and for my colleagues in the booth, Taylor Burris and Blake McCandless, I am James Pine, the voice of Podium eSports. Thank you so much for watching our broadcast of Monday Night Racing presented by Tufco Flooring. We now send you over to Rhino GT4 for those of you who are fans of T-Rick, 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 Team Rick. Well, we'll get a little bit of Rick-tacular action from the one and only Ryan Burton. Thank you all so much for tuning in tonight. We'll see you next Monday night. We'll find out which 10 becomes 7.